Brielle Washington stood outside Romano's restaurant, watching through the large glass windows as a man in a crisp blue suit tried desperately to calm two crying children. Her blind date. The one her best friend Tasha had promised would be perfect. The successful businessman who was supposed to sweep her off her feet on Christmas Eve. Except nobody mentioned he'd have two 6-year-old twins with him. Brielle's hand trembled on the door handle. She could walk away right now. Turn around, get back in her car and pretend she never saw this. It was supposed to be a romantic dinner, not a family affair. The restaurant glowed with warm lights and Christmas decorations. Couples sat at intimate tables sharing wine and laughter, and here was Jackson Harper, looking absolutely miserable as his daughter sobbed into his shoulder while his son coughed violently into a napkin. Through the window, she watched Jackson fumble with his phone, probably trying to text her an apology. His face was drawn with exhaustion, dark circles under his eyes. The little girl's face was flushed bright red, and the boy kept pulling at his collar like he couldn't breathe properly. Other diners were starting to stare, some with sympathy, others with clear annoyance. This was the moment. Brielle could choose herself, choose the easy path, choose the romantic Christmas Eve she'd been dreaming about for weeks. Or she could choose something else entirely. She pushed open the door. The blast of warm air hit her face as she walked through the restaurant, past the couples who had their perfect evenings, past the waiters who gave her knowing looks, straight to the table where Jackson Harper was whispering frantic apologies to his crying children. "I'm so sorry," Jackson said the moment he saw her, standing up so quickly his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I know this isn't what you expected. My babysitter got sick at the last minute and the twins, they're not feeling well either, and I should have canceled, but I thought maybe I could just..." He trailed off, looking at his children helplessly. "You should go. Really. I'm sorry for wasting your time." Brielle set her purse down on the table and slipped off her red coat. "I'm Brielle. And I'm staying." Jackson's mouth fell open. "What?" "I'm a pediatric nurse," Brielle said, already moving to the little girl's side. She knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with the child. "Hi, sweetie. What's your name?" The girl sniffled, her big brown eyes swimming with tears. "Sophie." "Hi, Sophie. I'm Miss Brie. Can I feel your forehead?" Brielle asked gently. Sophie nodded, and Brielle pressed the back of her hand against the child's skin. Heat radiated from her like a furnace. Brielle turned to the boy, who had stopped coughing but was breathing in short, shallow gasps. "And you must be her brother?" "Lucas," the boy whispered. His lips had a slight blue tinge that made Brielle's nursing instincts kick into high gear. "Jackson," Brielle said, her voice calm but firm. "How long have they been like this?" "Since this afternoon. I gave them medicine, but..." He ran his hand through his hair, messing up the neat style. "I thought it was just a cold. I didn't think it was serious." Brielle felt Lucas's forehead next. Even hotter than his sister's. She checked his pulse, fast and thready. "These babies need a hospital. Now." "What?" Jackson's face went pale. "But I thought..." "Sophie's running about 103, maybe 104. Lucas is worse and his breathing is compromised." Brielle was already helping Lucas stand up. "We need to get them to the emergency room right away." I can take them." "You don't have to," Jackson stammered. "I'm coming with you," Brielle said, wrapping her coat around Lucas's shoulders. "My car or yours?" Jackson stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Here he was, their first meeting completely ruined, his children sick, Christmas Eve in chaos, and this woman he'd never met before was staying. Not running. Not making excuses. Staying. "My car," he finally said. "It's right outside." They moved quickly through the restaurant, Jackson carrying Sophie while Brielle guided Lucas. The little boy leaned heavily against her, and she could feel him shivering despite his fever. Outside, the December air was crisp and cold, and Christmas lights twinkled on every building. Jackson's car was a large black SUV parked in the front lot. He fumbled with his keys, hands shaking, and Brielle gently took them from him. "You get the kids settled. I'll drive if you tell me which hospital." "You don't have to do this," Jackson said, but there was desperate hope in his eyes. "We just met. This is supposed to be a date, not..." "Right now these babies need help," Brielle said. "We can worry about everything else later." "Which hospital, Jackson?" "St. Mary's. It's about 15 minutes away." Brielle helped strap Lucas into his car seat while Jackson secured Sophie. Both children were whimpering now, too sick to cry properly. Once everyone was buckled in, Brielle slid into the driver's seat and adjusted the mirrors. "Hold on, babies," she called back to the twins. "Miss Brie's going to get you feeling better real soon." She pulled out of the parking lot smoothly, navigating the Christmas Eve traffic with practiced ease. In the passenger seat, Jackson kept turning around to check on his children, his face a mask of worry and guilt. "I should have taken them earlier," he muttered. "I just thought. I've been so busy with work and tonight was supposed to be. I'm an idiot." "You're a parent doing your best," Brielle said, keeping her eyes on the road. "Fevers can spike fast in kids. You couldn't have known. You're being too kind." "I'm being honest." Brielle glanced at him briefly. "How long have you been on your own with them?" Jackson was quiet for a moment. 2 years. My wife, she died in a car accident. It's been just us since then." Brielle's heart clenched. "I'm sorry." "I try so hard," Jackson said, his voice breaking slightly. "But I keep getting it wrong. I miss things. I work too much. They deserve better than me stumbling through this alone. They deserve a father who loves them," Brielle said firmly. "And from what I can see they've got that. The rest we figure out as we go." She'd said we. Jackson looked at her, this stranger who had walked into his disaster of an evening and stayed, who was now driving his sick children to the hospital like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her profile was beautiful in the passing streetlights, her skin a rich brown, her expression focused and calm. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. Brielle smiled, a small gentle curve of her lips. "Because kindness matters. Because those babies need help. Because sometimes the right thing to do is just to show up." "But our date is turning into something different," Brielle finished. "Maybe something better." In the back seat, Sophie whispered, "Is Miss Bree gonna stay with us?" "I'm right here, sweetie," Brielle called back. "Not going anywhere." Jackson felt something shift in his chest. This woman, this incredible woman, had just walked into his chaos and declared she was staying. No judgment. No running. Just staying. They pulled up to St. Mary's emergency entrance 10 minutes later. Brielle parked and jumped out, helping Lucas while Jackson grabbed Sophie. They rushed through the automatic doors into the bright fluorescent lights of the ER. "We need help," Brielle called to the triage nurse. 6-year-old twins, both with high fevers and respiratory distress. Symptoms started this afternoon, progressively worsening. The nurse immediately called for a gurney. Within minutes, Sophie and Lucas were being wheeled back into the treatment area, with Jackson following close behind. Brielle started to hang back, but Jackson reached out and caught her hand. "Please," he said. "Don't leave. They need you." Brielle squeezed his hand. "I'm not going anywhere, Jackson. I promise." As they walked through those hospital doors together, past the waiting room full of people spending their Christmas Eve in crisis, Brielle wondered what she'd just gotten herself into. This wasn't the romantic evening she'd planned. But somehow, watching Jackson hold his children's hands, seeing the love and fear in his eyes, she knew she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Sometimes love didn't show up in a candlelit restaurant with roses and wine. Sometimes it showed up in an emergency room on Christmas Eve, with sick children and a desperate single father who needed someone to just stay. And Brielle Washington had never been one to walk away from where she was needed most. Have you ever met someone at their absolute worst moment and decided to stay anyway? What would you do in Brielle's shoes? Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories about love, hope, and the families we choose. The emergency room buzzed with activity, a symphony of beeping monitors and hushed urgent conversations. Brielle stayed close to Jackson as nurses worked on Sophie and Lucas, taking their temperatures, checking vital signs, asking rapid-fire questions that Jackson struggled to answer through his panic. 103.8 for the girl, one nurse called out. 104.2 for the boy, another responded. His oxygen saturation is low. 89%. Brielle's trained ear caught every detail. She watched as they placed an oxygen mask over Lucas's face, saw the relief in his eyes as he could finally breathe easier. Sophie was crying again, scared by all the strange people and equipment. "Can I?" Brielle asked the attending nurse, gesturing toward Sophie. The nurse, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked at Jackson. "Dad." "Please," Jackson said. She trusts her. Brielle moved to Sophie's side, taking the little girl's hand. "Hey sweetie, I know this is scary. But these nice people are going to help you feel better. See that thing on your brother's face? That's giving him special air to help him breathe. You might get one too." "Will it hurt?" Sophie whispered. "Not at all. It's like a soft wind on your face." Brielle brushed Sophie's dark curls back from her forehead. "You're being so brave. Are you leaving?" Sophie asked, her voice small and frightened. No, baby. I'm staying right here with you and your daddy. A doctor in a white coat appeared, tablet in hand. Mr. Harper? Yes, that's me. Jackson stepped forward, looking like he might collapse himself. I'm Dr. Peterson. Your children have influenza B, likely picked up at school. The fever is quite high for both, and your son has developed some bronchial inflammation, which is why he's having trouble breathing. We need to start them on 4 fluids immediately. They're both dehydrated. 4. Jackson repeated. Needles? It's necessary, Dr. Peterson said gently. They need fluids and medication that will work faster intravenously. Jackson looked at his children, then at Brielle. She could see the fear in his eyes. He'd already lost his wife. The terror of something happening to his children was written all over his face. They'll be okay, Brielle said softly. 4 fluids will help them recover faster. It's the right call. You're a nurse? Dr. Peterson asked, noticing Brielle's confident assessment. Pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital downtown. 7 years. Dr. Peterson nodded approvingly. Then you know what we're dealing with. Are you family? Brielle hesitated, but Jackson spoke up immediately. Yes. She's with us. The doctor didn't question it. Good. The children will need support through this. We'll get the IVs started and monitor them for the next few hours. If their fevers come down and breathing stabilizes, they can go home tonight. Otherwise, we'll admit them for observation. Whatever they need, Jackson said. Money isn't an issue. Just help them. Dr. Peterson placed a reassuring hand on Jackson's shoulder. We've got them. They're going to be fine. As the medical team prepared the 4 equipment, Brielle positioned herself between both children's beds. They'd been placed in a double bay side by side so Jackson could be with both of them. Okay, babies, Brielle said using her most soothing voice. You're both going to feel a little pinch in your hand. It'll hurt for just a second, but then it'll help you feel so much better. Can you be brave for me? Will you hold my hand? Lucas asked from behind his oxygen mask, his voice muffled but clear enough. Both hands, Brielle promised. She positioned herself so she could reach both twins. Sophie, you grab my left hand. Lucas, you take my right. When they do the pinch, you squeeze as hard as you need to. The nurses worked efficiently, finding veins and inserting the IVs with practiced skill. Both children squeezed Brielle's hands, tears streaming down their faces, but they didn't pull away. Jackson stood at the foot of the beds, watching this woman he'd met less than an hour ago comfort his children through their pain. All done, the first nurse announced. You two are rock stars. The bravest patients we've had all night, the second nurse agreed, taping down the 4 lines securely. Brielle released the children's hands and wiped their tears with tissues from a nearby box. See? You did it. I'm so proud of you both. Can you stay? Sophie asked again. I already told you, sweetie. I'm not going anywhere. Dr. Peterson returned with more information. We've started them on fluids and antipyretics to bring down the fever. The next 2 hours are critical. If we can get those temperatures down to a safer range and Lucas's breathing improves, we'll reassess. 2 hours, Jackson repeated, sinking into a chair between the beds. He looked exhausted, running on pure adrenaline and fear. Mr. Harper, Brielle said gently. When did you last eat? I don't remember. Lunch? Maybe? There's a cafeteria on the 2nd floor. You should get something. I can't leave them. I'll stay with them, Brielle said. You need to keep your strength up for these babies. They need you. Jackson shook his head stubbornly. I'm not leaving. Brielle understood. She'd seen this before, parents so consumed with worry they forgot to take care of themselves. Then I'll go get us both something. Coffee? Sandwich? You don't have to. Jackson, Brielle interrupted gently. Let me help. Please. Something in her tone, the genuine care in her eyes, made Jackson nod. Coffee would be good. Black. And whatever they have. I don't care. I'll be right back. Brielle squeezed his shoulder as she passed, a brief touch that somehow conveyed more than words could. In the cafeteria, Brielle bought 2 coffees, 2 sandwiches, and some crackers and juice boxes she thought the twins might be able to handle once they felt better. She also grabbed a small stuffed reindeer from the gift shop. It was Christmas Eve after all. When she returned to the emergency bay, she found Jackson holding both children's free hands, talking to them softly. And when we get home, we'll have the best Christmas ever. Just the 3 of us. We'll stay in our pajamas all day and watch movies and eat all the cookies Mrs. Patterson made. 4 of us, Sophie said weakly. Miss Bree too. Jackson looked up as Brielle entered and she saw tears in his eyes. She wants you to spend Christmas with us. Brielle set down the food and coffee, then held up the reindeer. Well, I can't say no to that. Besides, I already got the Christmas decorations started. She placed the little reindeer between the twins' beds. Lucas managed a small smile behind his oxygen mask. That's Rudolph. That's right. And you know what Rudolph does? He guides people home safely. Just like you two are going to get home safe and sound. Jackson took the coffee gratefully, wrapping his hands around the warm cup. Brielle? I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. This isn't what you signed up for tonight. Jackson's voice was thick with emotion. You were supposed to have a nice dinner with a successful businessman, maybe some wine, conversation, a normal date. Instead, you're in an ER cafeteria food on Christmas Eve with a man you just met and his sick kids. Brielle sat down in the chair next to him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. You want to know something? I've been on a lot of dates. Dinner dates, movie dates, coffee dates. Know what most of them had in common? They were all surface. Nice conversation about nothing important. Polite smiles and forgettable evenings. She paused, looking at Sophie and Lucas, who were watching them with droopy, fever-glazed eyes. Tonight, I met a man who loves his children so much he brought them on a blind date rather than leave them with a stranger when they weren't feeling well. I met a father who would rather face embarrassment and rejection than risk his kids not being okay. And I met two brave little souls who are fighting through being sick with more courage than most adults I know. Brielle turned to look directly at Jackson. So no, this isn't the evening I planned. It's better. Because this is real. This matters. These babies matter. And if you'll let me, I'd like to help you through this. Jackson stared at her, coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. You're not real, he whispered. People like you don't exist. I'm very real, Brielle said with a small smile. I'm also stubborn, occasionally too honest, and I cry during sad commercials. But I believe in showing up when it matters. And right now, Jackson, this matters. Before Jackson could respond, Dr. Peterson appeared with a chart. Good news. Sophie's fever is down to 101.2. Lucas is at 101.8, and his oxygen saturation has improved to 94%. The medication is working. Thank God, Jackson breathed. We'll keep monitoring them, but if this trend continues, you should be able to take them home in about an hour. They'll need round-the-clock care for the next few days, plenty of fluids and strict bed rest. I'll make sure they get everything they need, Jackson said. Dr. Peterson glanced at Brielle. Having a nurse around will definitely help. You're fortunate. After the doctor left, Jackson turned to Brielle. Will you come home with us? Just to help get them settled? I'll pay you, of course. Whatever your hourly rate is. I don't want your money, Jackson. But I'm coming because I care about those babies. And because... Brielle paused, choosing her words carefully. Because I want to. Not for money. Not out of obligation. Because it feels right. Jackson's eyes searched her face. I don't understand you. You don't have to understand. Just accept the help. Okay, Jackson said softly. Okay. Thank you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking their coffee and eating the sandwiches. Sophie and Lucas dozed fitfully, their small bodies fighting the infection with the help of modern medicine. Brielle checked their IVs periodically, adjusting blankets and tucking Rudolph the reindeer where both children could see him. Around them, the emergency room continued its Christmas Eve chaos. Other families dealt with their own crises, their own fears. But in their small curtained bay, something quiet and important was happening. A connection was forming, fragile and new, but genuine. Jackson watched Brielle move around his children with professional efficiency and tender care. She adjusted Lucas's oxygen mask, smoothed Sophie's hair, checked their foresights with practiced hands. This woman who owed them nothing was giving them everything. Brielle? Jackson said quietly. Yes. Why did you stay? Really? You could have walked away the moment you saw us through that window. No one would have blamed you. Brielle was quiet for a long moment, thinking about her answer. My grandmother used to say that we're all just walking each other home. Sometimes you're the one who needs help and sometimes you're the one who gives it. Tonight I could give it. So I did. That simple? That simple. Jackson shook his head in wonder. You're something else, Brielle Washington. So are you, Jackson Harper. So are you. When the nurse came to check vitals 30 minutes later, both children's fevers had dropped below 100. Lucas's breathing had normalized enough that they removed his oxygen mask. The color had returned to both their faces, replacing the frightening flush of high fever. Looks like you're going home for Christmas. the nurse said cheerfully. Dr. Peterson will be in shortly to discharge them. Sophie's eyes opened. Miss Bree? Are you coming home with us? Brielle looked at Jackson, who nodded hopefully. Yes, sweetie. I'm coming with you. Good, Sophie whispered, closing her eyes again. Don't leave. I won't, Brielle promised. Not tonight. But as she said the words, she wondered if tonight would turn into something more. Something neither of them had planned but both of them needed. Because sometimes the best things in life aren't planned at all. Sometimes they just show up in emergency rooms on Christmas Eve, unexpected and perfect and exactly right. It was close to midnight when Dr. Peterson finally signed the discharge papers. The hospital had grown quieter, the Christmas Eve rush settling into a late-night calm. Jackson carried Sophie while Brielle guided a drowsy Lucas through the corridors, the little boy's hand firmly clasped in hers. We need to stop at the pharmacy, Dr. Peterson had said. They'll need antibiotics, fever reducers and some cough medicine for Lucas. The hospital pharmacy is still open for emergencies. So they made their way to the basement level where a tired-looking pharmacist filled their prescriptions while Christmas music played softly from a radio. Jackson tried 3 times to get his credit card to work before realizing his hands were shaking too badly to slide it through the machine properly. Here, Brielle said gently, taking the card from him. Let me. I'm usually more competent than this, Jackson muttered, embarrassed. You're exhausted and you've been terrified for hours. You're allowed to be human. The pharmacist, an older man with kind eyes, handed over 3 prescription bags. Keep them hydrated, lots of rest, and they should be feeling much better in a few days. Merry Christmas, folks. You've got beautiful children. Thank you, Jackson and Brielle said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. Outside, the December air was cold and crisp. Snow had started to fall, light flurries that sparkled under the parking lot lights. Sophie stirred in Jackson's arms. Daddy, it's snowing, she whispered. I see that, baby. Christmas snow just for you and Lucas. Can we make snow angels tomorrow? Maybe in a few days when you're feeling better. Brielle helped buckle Lucas into his car seat while Jackson secured Sophie. Both children were already dozing off again, the medication and exhaustion pulling them under. Brielle slid into the passenger seat this time and Jackson took the wheel. Where do you live? He asked as he started the car. Actually, I should probably get my car first. It's still at Romano's. Jackson was quiet for a moment. Please don't go. Not yet. Come back to the house, help me get them settled, and I'll bring you back to your car later. Or I'll have my driver bring your car to you. Whatever you need. He trailed off, looking at her desperately. I know I'm asking too much. But I don't think I can do this alone tonight. Brielle could see the fear underneath his request. He'd been running on adrenaline at the hospital, focused on getting his children help. Now, faced with taking them home and caring for them through the night, reality was setting in. He was scared. Okay, she said softly. I'll stay until they're settled. The relief on Jackson's face was palpable. Thank you. They drove through quiet streets decorated with Christmas lights, past houses where families were probably already asleep, waiting for Christmas morning. Jackson lived in a gated community about 20 minutes from the hospital, in a massive house that looked like something from a magazine. Welcome to our home, Jackson said as they pulled into a circular driveway. It's too big, but the kids love the yard. A woman in her 60s opened the front door as they pulled up, concern written all over her face. She wore a comfortable green sweater and slacks, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. Mr. Harper, how are they? They're okay, Mrs. Patterson. Flu but treatable. This is Brielle Washington. She helped us tonight. Brielle, this is Mrs. Patterson, our housekeeper and the person who keeps this house running. Mrs. Patterson's eyes widened as she took in the situation. Jackson carrying one sleeping child, Brielle guiding another, both of them looking exhausted but united in their purpose. Pleased to meet you, dear. Come in, come in. I've prepared the children's rooms and I have soup on the stove if anyone's hungry. You didn't have to stay up, Jackson said as they entered the spacious foyer. As if I could sleep knowing the little ones were sick. Mrs. Patterson led the way up a grand staircase. I've turned down their beds and set out their favorite pajamas. The twins' bedrooms were side by side on the second floor, connected by a shared bathroom. They were bright, cheerful spaces filled with toys and books and the evidence of happy childhoods. Brielle helped Lucas into his room, decorated in shades of blue with posters of planets and spaceships on the walls. Let's get you into pajamas, sweetheart, she said softly. I can help with that, Mrs. Patterson offered, but Brielle shook her head. If you could bring me a cool washcloth and some water? I want to make sure his fever stays down. Of course, dear. Brielle helped Lucas change into his pajamas, the little boy barely conscious enough to lift his arms. His fever had dropped significantly, but she could still feel warmth radiating from his skin. She tucked him into bed, arranging his stuffed animals around him the way he wordlessly indicated he liked. Miss Brie? Lucas whispered as she pulled the covers up to his chin. Yes, honey? Are you going to be here when I wake up? Brielle's heart squeezed. I'll be right down the hall, I promise. Okay. I like you. I like you too, Lucas. Get some sleep now. Mrs. Patterson appeared with a washcloth, water, and a small basin. He's a sweet boy. They both are. Lost their mother so young, poor things. Jackson mentioned that, Brielle said quietly, dabbing Lucas's forehead with the cool cloth. Broke all our hearts. Mrs. Harper was a lovely woman. The children barely remember her now, which is sad in its own way. Mrs. Patterson set the water glass on the nightstand. Mr. Harper tries so hard, but he's been drowning these past 2 years. Works himself to death trying to provide for them, but what they need is someone to just be present, Brielle finished. Exactly. Mrs. Patterson studied Brielle with shrewd, kind eyes. Are you the blind date Tasha set up? I am. Though it didn't quite go as planned. Best things never do, dear. I saw the way you look at those children. And the way Mr. Harper looks at you. Mrs. Patterson patted Brielle's hand. I'm glad you stayed. Next door they could hear Jackson getting Sophie settled. Brielle found him trying to brush his daughter's tangled hair, his large hands clumsy with the small brush. Here, let me, Brielle offered. Jackson handed over the brush gratefully. She hates having her hair done. Her mom used to. I'm not good at this part. You're doing fine, Brielle said, gently working through Sophie's curls. Sometimes we just need help with the things that aren't our strengths. Sophie's eyes fluttered open. You're still here. Told you I would be. Will you read me a story? Jackson started to protest. Sophie, Miss Brie has done enough. I'd love to, Brielle said. What's your favorite book? Sophie pointed to a worn copy of The Velveteen Rabbit on her nightstand. Mommy used to read this one. Jackson's face went pale, but Brielle just picked up the book and settled into the chair beside Sophie's bed. This is one of my favorites too. As she read, her voice soft and soothing, Jackson stood in the doorway watching. This woman who had been a stranger hours ago was reading his late wife's favorite book to his daughter, and somehow it didn't feel wrong. It felt like a bridge between then and now, between grief and hope. By the time Brielle finished the story, Sophie was asleep, her breathing even and peaceful. The little reindeer from the hospital sat on her pillow next to her. Brielle and Jackson tiptoed out, leaving both bedroom doors slightly ajar. In the hallway, Jackson leaned against the wall, suddenly looking like all the energy had drained out of him. You okay? Brielle asked. That book, Jackson said roughly. Catherine used to read it to them every night when they were babies. After she died, I haven't been able to read it to them. It hurt too much. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Don't apologize. It was beautiful. Hearing someone read it to them again. Jackson scrubbed his hand over his face. Everything about tonight has been surreal. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and you'll be gone, and this will have all been some fever dream. I'm real. And I'm still here. Why? Jackson asked, the question he'd been holding back finally emerging. Why are you doing all this, Brielle? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Is it pity? Professional obligation? What? Brielle considered her answer carefully. They stood in the quiet hallway of his home, Christmas lights visible through a window at the end of the hall, the sound of sleeping children's breathing coming from nearby rooms. When I was in nursing school, she said slowly, I had a professor who told us that medicine is science but healing is art. She said that sometimes the medicine we give isn't in a pill or in four. Sometimes it's presence. It's showing up. It's being the person who stays when everyone else leaves. She met Jackson's eyes directly. You didn't ask for tonight to go this way. Neither did I. But here we are. Your children needed help and I could give it. You needed support and I could offer it. It's not pity. It's not obligation. It's just human kindness. The kind of kindness I hope someone would show me if I needed it. Jackson's eyes filled with tears. I have spent 2 years feeling like I'm failing them every single day. Every missed school event because of work. Every time I can't figure out how to do their hair right or help with homework or just be both parents when I can barely manage being one. And then you walk in and in a few hours, you've shown me what I've been missing. You're not failing them, Brielle said firmly. Jackson, those children adore you. I can see it in how they look at you, how they trust you. You're doing an impossible job and doing it with love. That's what matters. I offered you money earlier. That was insulting. It was practical. You were trying to find a way to make this arrangement make sense. Will you accept something? Jackson asked. Not money for tonight. But, let me hire you. As their nanny. Full-time. Whatever salary you need, I'll pay it. Benefits, schedule flexibility, anything you want. I need someone like you in their lives. In our lives. Brielle's breath caught. Jackson, that's a huge decision to make at 1 a.m. after the night we've had. I know. But I've been looking for someone for months. I've interviewed dozens of nannies and none of them were right. They were qualified, professional, experienced. But they didn't see my children. They saw a job, a paycheck. You. He gestured helplessly. You saw Sophie and Lucas. You stayed in an emergency room on Christmas Eve. You're reading them bedtime stories like you've known them forever. How am I supposed to let you walk away? I have a job. A career I love at Children's Hospital. I know. And I'm not asking you to give it up completely. Work for me part-time. Whatever works for you. Jackson's voice broke. I can't do this alone anymore. And after tonight, I don't want to. Brielle's mind raced. This was crazy. You didn't append your life for people you just met, no matter how much they needed you. You didn't accept job offers made in emotional moments at 1 a.m. You were logical, rational, careful. But when had logic ever made anyone's life better? When had caution ever led to something amazing? Let me think about it, she said finally. Not because I don't want to help, but because a decision like this deserves proper thought. Give me a few days? Jackson nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. Of course. I'm sorry for pushing. You're scared and exhausted and you've been through a trauma tonight, Brielle said gently. We both need sleep. Real sleep, not hospital chair naps. And then we can think clearly. Will you at least stay tonight? I have guest rooms. Mrs. Patterson can get you anything you need. And in the morning, the kids will want to see you. Brielle knew she should say no. Should insist on going home to her own apartment, her own bed, her own life. But the thought of Sophie and Lucas waking up and finding her gone. Okay, she said. I'll stay tonight. But you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll sleep. Not stay up worrying about the kids. I'll check on them every few hours. You need rest too. I don't know if I can sleep. Try. For them. They need you healthy and whole. Jackson nodded slowly. There's a guest room at the end of this hall. Mrs. Patterson will have put fresh towels and everything you need. If you need anything else. I'll be fine. Go to bed, Jackson. He hesitated, like he wanted to say something more, then just nodded and headed toward what must be the master bedroom. Brielle watched him go, then turned back to check on the twins one more time. Both were sleeping peacefully, their fevers down, breathing normal. She stood between their rooms for a long moment, listening to the quiet sounds of a house at rest. Mrs. Patterson appeared with a soft blue nightgown. Thought you might want something comfortable to sleep in, dear. This was Mrs. Harper's, but I think she'd want you to have it. Oh, I couldn't. You can and you will. That woman would have loved you for what you did tonight. For what you're doing for her family. Mrs. Patterson pressed the nightgown into Brielle's hands. The guest room is ready. There's a baby monitor on the nightstand so you can hear if the children need anything. And dear? Yes. Thank you for staying. Mr. Harper hasn't really smiled in 2 years. But tonight, when he looks at you, I see something I thought was gone forever. Hope. After Mrs. Patterson left, Brielle made her way to the guest room. It was beautiful, decorated in soft greens and creams, with a comfortable king-sized bed and an attached bathroom. She changed into the borrowed nightgown, washed her face and climbed into bed. The baby monitor crackled softly with the sounds of sleeping children. Through the window she could see snow still falling, blanketing the world in white. Christmas Day was only hours away. Brielle lay in the dark, thinking about everything that had happened. This morning she'd been a single pediatric nurse looking forward to a blind date. Now she was lying in a stranger's guest room, wearing his late wife's nightgown, listening to his children sleep, and considering a job offer that would change everything. It was crazy. Impulsive. Completely unlike her normally cautious self. But somehow it felt right. She thought about Sophie asking if she'd still be there in the morning. About Lucas saying he liked her in that simple, honest way children have. About Jackson's desperate hope when he asked her to stay, to help, to be part of their lives. About how it felt to be needed in a way that mattered. Brielle had always believed that some moments in life were bigger than others. Moments where you could feel the trajectory of your future shifting, where a choice made or not made would ripple out in ways you couldn't predict. Standing outside Romano's restaurant, watching a man struggle with his sick children, that had been one of those moments. And she had chosen to stay. Now, lying in the darkness of Christmas morning, she wondered if she would choose to stay again. Not just for tonight but for longer. For a family that needed her. For children who were already stealing her heart. For a man who was carrying too much alone and who looked at her like she was the answer to prayers he'd been too afraid to pray. The baby monitor crackled again. Sophie's voice, sleepy and small. "Miss Bree?" Brielle was up and moving immediately, padding down the hall in bare feet. She slipped into Sophie's room to find the little girl sitting up, looking around in confusion. "I'm here, sweetie," Brielle whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I had a dream you left," Sophie said, tears in her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere. See, right here." Sophie grabbed Brielle's hand. "Promise?" Brielle looked at this little girl who had lost her mother and was so afraid of losing anyone else she let into her heart. She thought about all the logical reasons to be careful, to not make promises she might not keep. And then she thought about what mattered more than logic. "I promise," Brielle said. "Now you close your eyes and sleep. When you wake up, it'll be Christmas and I'll still be here." "Okay," Sophie whispered, already drifting off again. Brielle sat there for a long time, holding a child's hand in the darkness, watching snow fall outside the window. And she knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that she had already made her choice. She was staying. Not just for tonight. Christmas morning arrived with pale winter sunlight streaming through the guest room windows. Brielle woke to the sound of children's laughter and immediately remembered where she was. She checked her phone, 7:30 a.m. She'd slept maybe 4 hours total, having woken twice more to check on Sophie and Lucas. She changed back into her red dress from the night before, feeling ridiculous but having no other options. When she opened the bedroom door, she could hear voices downstairs. "But can we wake her up?" That was Sophie. "No, baby. Miss Bree needs her rest. She stayed up late taking care of you." Jackson's voice, gentle but firm. "But it's Christmas morning," Lucas protested. "And she promised she'd be here." Brielle smiled and made her way downstairs. The house looked different in daylight, warm and lived in despite its size. Christmas decorations were everywhere, and a massive tree dominated the living room, covered in ornaments that looked handmade by small hands. Jackson stood in the kitchen wearing jeans and a green sweater, looking rumpled and exhausted but infinitely better than he had last night. The twins sat at the kitchen counter in their pajamas, both looking much healthier though still a bit pale. "Miss Bree," Sophie shrieked when she spotted her, jumping off her stool. "Careful, baby," Jackson cautioned, but Sophie was already running to Brielle. Brielle caught her in a hug. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" "Better. Daddy said we have to stay in our pajamas all day and rest." "But it's Christmas." "That's right. And you know what makes Christmas special? Being with people you care about. Pajamas are just a bonus." Lucas came over more slowly, still a bit wobbly. "You stayed. I told you I would." Mrs. Patterson appeared from what must be the pantry, wearing a festive red apron. "Good morning, dear. Coffee? Please? That would be amazing. I hope you're hungry. I'm making pancakes and bacon. It's our Christmas morning tradition." Jackson moved to pour Brielle's coffee himself, their hands brushing briefly as he handed her the mug. "How did you sleep?" "Fine. I checked on the kids a few times. Their fever stayed down." "I know. I checked too." Jackson smiled ruefully. "So much for that promise to sleep through the night." "We're parents," Mrs. Patterson said knowingly. "We don't sleep when children are sick. It's against our nature." Brielle noticed Mrs. Patterson had said, "we," as if she'd already accepted Brielle as part of this family unit. The thought should have been alarming, but instead it felt nice. "Can we open presents?" Lucas asked hopefully. "After breakfast," Jackson said. "And after you both take your medicine." Both children groaned but didn't argue. They were clearly feeling better, which Brielle was grateful to see. As a pediatric nurse, she'd seen enough sick children to know when they were really improving versus just having a temporary rally. Breakfast was chaotic and wonderful. The twins talked over each other, telling Brielle about their school and their friends and everything they'd asked Santa for. Jackson tried to get them to eat more than they talked, with limited success. Mrs. Patterson kept the food coming, looking pleased with herself. "This is nice," Jackson said quietly, sitting next to Brielle at the large kitchen table. "Having someone else here. The holidays have been." He trailed off. "Hard?" Brielle finished. "Yeah. Really hard. Catherine loved Christmas. She went all out with decorations and cookies and traditions. After she died, I tried to keep it up for the kids, but it always felt like I was just going through the motions. Like I was playing at being festive without actually feeling it. And this year? Jackson looked at his children, then at Brielle. This year feels different. Even with everything that happened last night. Maybe especially because of it. After breakfast, they moved to the living room. The tree was even more beautiful up close, with twinkling lights and a strange mix of expensive ornaments and clearly homemade ones made from popsicle sticks and glitter. The kids make new ornaments every year, Jackson explained, seeing where Brielle was looking. That one's from when they were 3. Sophie's butterfly and Lucas's spaceship. They're perfect, Brielle said honestly. The presents under the tree were neatly wrapped and there were a lot of them. Jackson looked almost embarrassed. I might have overcompensated this year. Daddy always buys too much, Sophie said matter-of-factly. But it's because he loves us. That's exactly right, Jackson agreed, pulling his daughter into a hug. They opened presents slowly, the twins exclaiming over each gift. Books, toys, art supplies, science kits. Jackson had clearly put thought into each present, choosing things that matched his children's interests rather than just buying whatever was popular. This is for you, Miss Bree, Lucas said suddenly, pulling a small wrapped box from under the tree. Brielle's eyes widened. What? No, I couldn't. Please, Jackson said. It's just something small. I had Mrs. Patterson wrap it this morning. With shaking hands, Brielle unwrapped the box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 3 small charms. A heart, a star, and a snowflake. The heart is because you have a big heart, Sophie explained. The star is because you're special like a star. And the snowflake is because you came to us on a snowy night. Brielle felt tears prick her eyes. This is beautiful. Thank you. There's an inscription, Jackson said softly. Brielle turned the bracelet over. Engraved on the inside was, for staying. Christmas 2025. When did you? Brielle started. I texted Mrs. Patterson around 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep, Jackson admitted. Asked her to find something in my wife's jewelry that could be repurposed. The engraving place does rush orders. Mrs. Patterson picked it up early this morning. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. You gave up your Christmas Eve for us. Let me give you something back. Brielle let Jackson clasp the bracelet around her wrist. The weight of it felt significant, like a promise or a beginning. They spent the rest of the morning in comfortable chaos. The twins played with their new toys while Jackson and Brielle worked together to make sure they took their medicine on schedule and stayed hydrated. Mrs. Patterson produced a Christmas dinner that smelled incredible, and even though it was barely noon, no one objected to eating early. When you have kids, traditions can happen whenever they want, Mrs. Patterson said wisely. During dinner, Jackson's phone buzzed repeatedly. He ignored it the first few times, but eventually glanced at the screen and frowned. Work? Brielle asked. My parents? They're upset I canceled Christmas dinner at their place. I told them the kids were sick, but... He shook his head. They think I coddle them too much. Your children had 104-degree fevers last night, Brielle said flatly. That's not coddling. That's appropriate medical response. Jackson smiled. I like having a nurse around to back me up. Daddy's parents are mean, Sophie said, not bothering to whisper. Sophie, Jackson warned gently. Well, they are. They always say we're too loud and we should sit still more and we need better manners. They're from a different generation, Jackson said diplomatically. They love you in their own way. Lucas rolled his eyes in a gesture so adult it made Brielle laugh. They love Daddy's money more. Lucas, Jackson said, but there was no real reprimand in his voice. It's true, Lucas insisted. I heard Grandma telling Grandpa that you should put us in boarding school so you could focus on the company. Jackson's face went pale. When did you hear that? At Thanksgiving. Why didn't you tell me? Lucas shrugged. We didn't want to make you sad. You're sad a lot already. The room fell silent. Brielle watched emotions play across Jackson's face. Guilt, anger, sadness, frustration. She reached under the table and squeezed his hand briefly. Your daddy's not sad right now, she said to the twins. Look at him. Does he look sad? Both children studied their father carefully. No, Sophie said finally. He looks happy. That's right. And you know why? Because you're here, Lucas said with the blunt honesty of a 6-year-old. Because his children are feeling better and it's Christmas and we're all together, Brielle corrected gently. That's what matters. Not what anyone else thinks you should do or where you should be. This, right here, is exactly where we're supposed to be. Jackson's eyes met hers across the table, and the gratitude there was overwhelming. After dinner, the twins were starting to fade again. The fever and illness had taken a lot out of them, and even with the medicine they needed rest. Jackson carried Sophie upstairs while Brielle helped Lucas, and they tucked both children in for afternoon naps. "Read us another story?" Sophie asked sleepily. "Of course," Brielle agreed. She read from the same worn copy of The Velveteen Rabbit, her voice soft and soothing. By the time she finished, both children were asleep. Jackson waited for her in the hallway. "Thank you," he said simply. "You keep thanking me. Because I keep being grateful." Jackson gestured toward the stairs. "Want to talk somewhere more comfortable?" They ended up in a cozy den off the main living area. Large windows overlooked a snow-covered backyard with a swing set and what looked like a treehouse. Jackson started a fire in the fireplace while Brielle settled into a comfortable armchair. "This is a beautiful home," she said. "Catherine designed most of it. She had amazing taste. I keep thinking I should redecorate, make it more mine, but—" He trailed off. "But it still has pieces of her, and that's important for the kids." "Yeah." Jackson sat down on the couch across from her. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Last night you mentioned your grandmother. Is she still?" "She passed 5 years ago. But her voice is still in my head, guiding me." Brielle smiled. "She raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 8. Jackson's expression turned pained. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bring up difficult memories." "Don't apologize. My grandmother gave me an incredible life. She taught me about compassion and service and showing up for people. Everything good about me comes from her." "Is that why you became a nurse?" "Partly. She was a nurse too, actually. Worked in pediatrics for 40 years. I used to go with her to the hospital sometimes when I was little, and I'd see how the kids' faces lit up when she walked in. She had this gift for making them feel safe." Brielle touched the bracelet on her wrist. "She always said that scared children need someone who stays. Who doesn't run when things get hard. Like you didn't run last night." "Like I didn't run last night," Brielle agreed. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching snow fall outside the windows. The fire crackled softly, and from upstairs came the faint sound of the baby monitor broadcasting sleeping children's breaths. "About my job offer," Jackson said carefully. "I meant what I said. But I also want you to know there's no pressure. If you say no, it won't change anything about today or about us. You'll still be welcome here anytime." "Us?" Brielle questioned gently. Jackson had the grace to look embarrassed. "I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I?" "Maybe a little. It's just, I haven't felt this comfortable with someone since Catherine. And I know it's only been 12 hours, which is crazy. But sometimes you meet someone and it just clicks. You know what I mean." Brielle did know. She'd felt it too, that strange sense of rightness that defied logical explanation. "I know. So you'll think about the job?" "I will. But Jackson, we need to be honest about what that would mean. If I'm going to work for you, we can't. There can't be anything else. Not at first. The kids need stability, not their nanny and their dad having a complicated relationship." "You're right. Of course you're right." Jackson ran his hand through his hair. "But for the record, if circumstances were different..." "If circumstances were different, I'd say yes to dinner. Real dinner without sick kids and emergency rooms." Jackson smiled, that genuine smile that transformed his face from tired and stressed to handsome and hopeful. "Can I ask one more thing?" "You can ask." "Stay for the rest of the day?" "Not as a potential employee or a romantic interest or anything with labels. Just stay. Because the kids will want you here when they wake up. And because I want you here too." Brielle thought about her empty apartment across town. About the frozen dinner she'd have eaten alone if the blind date had been cancelled. About all the logical reasons to establish boundaries and be professional. Then she thought about Sophie's sleepy voice asking if she'd stay. About Lucas holding her hand in the emergency room. About Jackson reading bedtime stories with tears in his eyes because it reminded him of his late wife. About how sometimes the right choice isn't the logical one. "I'll stay," she said. "But you need to take me to get my car at some point today. I'll have my driver pick it up and bring it here. Give me your keys." "Jackson. Please. It's Christmas. Let me handle the logistics so you can just relax." Brielle handed over her keys and Jackson immediately texted someone. Within minutes, he'd arranged for her car to be brought to his house. "Thank you," she said. "No, thank you. For everything. For staying last night. For coming back today. For even considering my crazy job offer." "It's not crazy," Brielle said thoughtfully. "Unconventional maybe. Fast, definitely. But not crazy. They talked for hours while the twins slept. About their lives, their dreams, their fears. Jackson told her about building his company from the ground up, about the pressure of being responsible for hundreds of employees. Brielle shared stories from the hospital, funny moments and heartbreaking ones, the daily roller coaster of pediatric nursing. Do you want kids of your own someday? Jackson asked at one point. I do. I've always wanted a family. But I also want a partner who understands that children aren't accessories or obligations. They're whole people who deserve time and attention and love. That's beautiful. It's practical. I've seen too many kids in the hospital whose parents are physically present but emotionally absent, who check their phones during diagnosis meetings or can't name their child's teacher or don't know their favorite color. Brielle shook her head. I'd rather be single forever than have children with someone who sees them as an interruption to real life. Catherine used to say something similar. That children are life, not things that happen alongside life. Smart woman. She was. Jackson stared into the fire. I miss her. Not every day anymore, which used to make me feel guilty. But I miss who I was when she was alive. I knew how to be happy then. You can be happy again, Brielle said gently. Different happy maybe, but still real. Is that what you think? That happiness can be different but still count. I know it can. After my grandmother died, I thought I'd never feel that kind of love again. That kind of security. But I found new kinds. Friends who became family. Patients who taught me joy. A career that gives me purpose. She met his eyes. Happiness isn't one size fits all. It's whatever makes your heart feel full. You're good at this, Jackson said. At saying the right thing. I'm good at speaking truth. That's different than knowing the right thing to say. When the twins woke up around 4 p.m., they found Jackson and Brielle still in the den, having transitioned from deep conversation to comfortable silence, both reading books from Jackson's impressive library. Miss Bree, Sophie called from the top of the stairs. You're still here. Still here, Brielle confirmed. The evening passed in a pleasant blur. They watched Christmas movies, the twins snuggled under blankets on the couch with Brielle sitting between them. Jackson made hot chocolate, burning the first batch and succeeding on the second attempt. Mrs. Patterson brought out Christmas cookies she'd baked earlier in the week, and they all ate too many while laughing at animated reindeer on the screen. It felt, Brielle thought, like family. Not in the traditional sense, maybe. But in the way that mattered. People caring for each other, being present for each other, choosing to be together. Around 8 p.m. Jackson's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and sighed. My parents again. I should probably take this. He stepped into his office and Brielle could hear his voice rising and falling through the door. When he came back 20 minutes later, he looked exhausted and frustrated. Everything okay? She asked quietly. The twins were absorbed in their movie. They want to come by tomorrow. To check on the kids and, quote, meet this mysterious woman who's apparently moved into my house. Ah. I told them you haven't moved in, that you're helping with the children's recovery, but... Jackson rubbed his temples. They're very traditional. Very concerned about appearances and what people think. And having your blind date spend Christmas with you probably breaks about a dozen of their social rules. Something like that. Brielle considered. Do you want me to leave before they come? No, Jackson said immediately. No. I want you to stay. I want them to see what good care looks like. What kindness looks like. He paused. I want them to understand why I'm going to be making some changes. Changes? I've been running myself into the ground trying to be the CEO they want me to be while also being the father I want to be. Something's got to give and it's not going to be my kids. Good, Brielle said firmly. Those babies need you more than your company does. My parents won't see it that way. Then your parents need to adjust their perspective. Jackson laughed, a real laugh that made the twins look up from their movie. You're fierce when it comes to the kids. I'm fierce about what's right. Those children have already lost their mother. They don't need to lose their father to workaholism and misplaced priorities. Will you stay tomorrow? When my parents come? Brielle knew this was a significant request. Meeting the parents, even in these unusual circumstances, meant something. It meant Jackson saw her as more than just someone passing through. It meant he wanted his family to know she existed, to see her role in his children's lives. It meant commitment of a sort. I'll stay, she said. But you need to set boundaries with them. Make it clear that I'm here because your children need me, not because we're in some scandalous relationship. Are we? In a relationship. Brielle looked at him steadily. Right now, we're two people who care about these children. Everything else comes after we figure that out. Fair enough. They put the twins to bed around 9 p.m., both children protesting that they weren't tired even as they yawned. Jackson did stories this time while Brielle supervised medicine doses. Then they stood in the hallway again, listening to the soft sounds of settling children. I should probably go home tonight, Brielle said. Get some clothes, check my mail, remind myself I have a life outside this house. Okay. Jackson couldn't quite hide his disappointment. But I'll come back in the morning. Before your parents arrive. Promise? Promise? Jackson walked her down to the garage where her car now sat, brought by his driver earlier. They stood awkwardly by her car door, neither quite sure how to say goodbye. Thank you, Jackson said. For the 1,000th time, thank you. Stop thanking me and start letting me help. Really help. Is that a yes to the job? Brielle smiled. That's a, let me think about it over the next few days and we'll talk seriously. But Jackson? I'm leaning toward yes. The hope that lit up his face was beautiful. Really? Really? Your kids are amazing. You're a good man trying hard in impossible circumstances. And I think maybe I can help make those circumstances a little less impossible. You already have. Brielle got in her car but rolled down the window. Get some real sleep tonight. Doctor's orders. Nurse's orders, Jackson corrected with a smile. Even better. She drove home through the quiet Christmas night, her mind spinning with everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. It was crazy. All of it was completely crazy. You didn't meet someone one night and seriously consider restructuring your entire life around them the next day. Except apparently, sometimes you did. At home, her apartment felt empty and cold. She took a long shower, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat on her couch staring at the bracelet on her wrist. For staying. She'd stayed last night. She'd stayed today. And tomorrow she'd stay again. The question was, how long would she keep staying? Her phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. Made it home okay? She smiled and texted back, safe and sound. How are the kids? Already asking when you're coming back tomorrow. Also, Mrs. Patterson says I need to let you sleep in and not text you again tonight, but I'm a rebel. Brielle laughed out loud. Listen to Mrs. Patterson. She's wise. She is. She also thinks I'm an idiot if I let you get away. Then don't be an idiot. Working on it. Good night, Brielle. Thank you for giving us the best Christmas we've had in 2 years. Good night, Jackson. See you in the morning. Brielle set her phone down and curled up on her couch, thinking about everything. About sick children and hospital visits and emergency rooms on Christmas Eve. About a man who loved his kids so much he brought them on a blind date rather than leave them with a stranger. About a housekeeper who gave away her late mistress's nightgown to a woman she'd just met. About 2 6-year-olds who had already claimed space in her heart. About how sometimes life doesn't go according to plan, and that turns out to be exactly right. She fell asleep there on her couch, the bracelet on her wrist catching the lights from her small Christmas tree, 3 charms sparkling with promise. A heart, a star, and a snowflake. For staying. Brielle woke early on December 26th, her body clock confused after the chaos of the past 2 days. She packed a bag with clothes for the next few days, unsure exactly how long she'd be at Jackson's house but wanting to be prepared. Comfortable jeans, a few sweaters in bright colors, practical clothes for caring for children. She also called her supervisor at Children's Hospital. Dr. Reyes? It's Brielle Washington. Brielle? Aren't you off until after New Year's? I am, but I wanted to give you a heads up. Something's come up and I might need to discuss my schedule when I get back. Possibly moving to part-time. There was a pause. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. Actually, everything's really good. I just need some flexibility, and I wanted to let you know ahead of time rather than springing it on you. We'll talk when you're back, Dr. Reyes said warmly. But Brielle, if this is about a personal opportunity, take it. You've been here 7 years without a vacation longer than a week. If something good has come along, don't let it pass you by. Thank you, Dr. Reyes. Is it a man? Brielle laughed. It's complicated. The best things usually are. See you next week. Brielle arrived at Jackson's house around 10 a.m. Mrs. Patterson let her in with a knowing smile. The children have been watching out the window for you for the past hour. Mr. Harper too, though he pretends he's working. Sure enough, Sophie and Lucas came running as soon as they heard Brielle's voice. Both looked significantly better, color back in their faces, energy restored. Miss Bree, Sophie exclaimed. Daddy said we can watch a movie this afternoon if we rest this morning. Will you watch with us? Absolutely. And I want to show you my room properly, Lucas added. We were too sick yesterday, but I have a telescope and everything. I'd love to see it. Jackson appeared from his office, looking more rested than he had yesterday. He wore jeans and a maroon sweater that made his eyes look warm and inviting. "Good morning," he said, and there was something soft in his voice that made Brielle's heart skip. "Good morning. How's everyone feeling?" "Much better. Fevers are gone, appetites are back, and they're already driving Mrs. Patterson crazy with energy. That's a good sign. Means they're really on the mend." Mrs. Patterson emerged from the kitchen. "Mr. Harper, your parents will be here at noon. Should I set out tea and those cookies?" Jackson's expression tightened slightly. "Yes, thank you, Mrs. Patterson." After the twins ran off to play in the living room, Jackson pulled Brielle aside. "I should warn you. My parents are difficult. My mother will make comments that seem polite but are actually criticisms. My father will probably just ignore you entirely, which is somehow worse. I've dealt with difficult families at the hospital. I can handle it." "It's not the same," Jackson said. "These are my parents. If they're rude to you, I'll—" He trailed off, clearly struggling with family loyalty versus protecting someone he cared about. "You'll be polite but firm," Brielle said. "You'll make it clear I'm here to help with the children and that you value that help. Beyond that, their opinions don't matter." "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple. The complicated part is remembering it's simple when they're standing in front of you." At noon precisely, a luxury car pulled up the driveway. An older couple emerged, a woman in an expensive suit with perfectly styled hair, and a man in business casual who looked like an older version of Jackson. "Here we go," Jackson muttered. He opened the door before they could ring the bell. "Mother. Father. Come in." Mrs. Harper swept in first, her critical gaze taking in everything at once. "Jackson. The house looks—" She paused, clearly searching for something to criticize. "Festive. The children decorated," Jackson said. "They love Christmas." "Yes, well, children do have enthusiastic taste." Mrs. Harper's eyes landed on Brielle. "And who is this?" "This is Brielle Washington. She's been helping with Sophie and Lucas." "Helping how exactly?" Mrs. Harper's tone suggested she already disapproved. "I'm a pediatric nurse," Brielle said, extending her hand. "The children were quite ill on Christmas Eve. I assisted in getting them medical care and have been monitoring their recovery." Mrs. Harper shook her hand limply as if physical contact might be contagious. "How fortunate that you were available on Christmas Eve." "Actually, we were on a blind date," Jackson said, a note of defiance in his voice. Brielle stayed even when things didn't go as planned. "She's been incredible with the kids." Mr. Harper finally spoke, his voice dismissive. "A nurse? Well, I suppose that's practical, given the circumstances. Have you discussed salary?" "Not exactly," Jackson said tightly. "Because if you're looking for live-in help, we need to make sure the compensation is appropriate and there are clear boundaries. The last thing we need is staff taking advantage." "Dad," Jackson cut him off sharply. "Brielle is not staff. She's a friend helping us through a difficult situation." "A friend you just met," Mrs. Harper said archly. "How modern." Sophie appeared from the living room, saving the moment from getting more awkward. "Grandma, Grandpa, come see what Santa brought me." Mrs. Harper's expression softened slightly, though her smile looked more dutiful than genuine. "Hello, Sophie. Are you feeling better?" "Much better. Miss Bree took care of us. She stayed all night at the hospital and read us stories and everything." "How nice," Mrs. Harper said, shooting Brielle a look that was anything but approving. They moved to the living room where Lucas was building something elaborate with blocks. The tension in the air was palpable as Mrs. Harper perched on the edge of a chair, clearly uncomfortable sitting anywhere the children played. Mrs. Patterson brought tea and cookies, giving Brielle an encouraging look as she passed. "So, Jackson," Mr. Harper said, "I assume you'll be back at the office tomorrow? The Anderson merger won't wait just because the children had a cold." "It wasn't a cold," Jackson said firmly. "It was influenza with complications. Lucas's oxygen saturation dropped dangerously low." "But they're fine now," Mrs. Harper waved her hand dismissively. "Children bounce back quickly. You can't let every little illness derail important business." "Nothing about my children is little," Jackson said, his voice dangerously quiet. Brielle could see this was headed somewhere bad. "Mr. and Mrs. Harper," she interjected smoothly, "I don't know if Jackson mentioned, but we were quite concerned about Lucas especially. Respiratory complications in children can escalate quickly. The fact that we got him to the hospital when we did likely prevented him needing admission to the ICU." Mrs. Harper's eyes narrowed. Are you saying my son was neglecting his children? Not at all. I'm saying he made exactly the right choice in seeking immediate medical care. As a pediatric nurse, I see parents wait too long all the time, thinking things will improve on their own. Jackson's quick action likely saved Lucas from serious complications. Mr. Harper harumphed. Well, I'm sure we're all grateful for your professional opinion. Now, about this arrangement. What arrangement? Jackson asked. You mentioned she's been helping with the children. I assume you've offered her a position? We're discussing it. Then let's discuss it properly. Mr. Harper pulled out his phone. I can have our HR department draw up a standard nanny contract. Background checks, references, non-disclosure agreements. All very professional. I don't think. Jackson started, but Brielle touched his arm lightly. Actually, that sounds very reasonable, she said calmly. I'd be happy to provide references from Children's Hospital. Background checks are standard in pediatric nursing. And I certainly understand the need for confidentiality regarding your family. Mr. Harper looked surprised that she'd agreed so readily. Well, good. That's sensible. However, Brielle continued, any arrangement would need to accommodate my current position at Children's Hospital. I've been there 7 years and have no intention of leaving entirely. Part-time would be my maximum availability. Part-time? Mrs. Harper scoffed. Children need consistent care, not someone who treats them like a side job. Mother, Jackson warned. But Brielle wasn't finished. You're absolutely right, Mrs. Harper. Children do need consistent care. They also need a father who's present and engaged, not working himself into an early grave trying to meet everyone else's expectations. If I can help lighten Jackson's load so he can focus on Sophie and Lucas, that's exactly the kind of consistency they need. The room fell silent. Even the twins, playing with their toys, seemed to sense the tension and went still. Mrs. Harper's expression was icy. I see. And I suppose you think you know what's best for this family after, 2 days? I think, Brielle said carefully, that I know what sick children need. I know what pediatric recovery requires. And I know that Jackson is a devoted father doing his absolute best in difficult circumstances. Beyond that, what I think doesn't matter. What matters is what's best for Sophie and Lucas. And you think you are what's best? Mrs. Harper challenged. I think I can help. If Jackson wants that help, I'm happy to provide it. If not, I'll go back to my regular life and wish this family well. Either way, those children will know that someone cared enough to show up when they needed it. Mr. Harper cleared his throat. Jackson, perhaps we should speak privately. No, Jackson said firmly. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Brielle. She's right. She showed up when my kids needed help. Where were you? Mrs. Harper gasped. How dare you? Where were you, Mother? When Lucas couldn't breathe. When Sophie was burning with fever. When I was terrified I might lose them like I lost Catherine. I called you. You said you were at the club and couldn't leave your tennis match. We didn't know it was serious, Mrs. Harper said defensively. Because you didn't ask. You never ask about the kids unless it's to criticize how I'm raising them. Mr. Harper stood up. That's enough, Jackson. You're upset, but there's no call to be disrespectful. I'm done being respectful while you disrespect my choices, Jackson said, standing as well. Brielle stayed. She helped. She cared. That's all that matters to me. Jackson. Mrs. Harper tried again. No. You're my parents and I love you. But you don't get to come into my home and criticize the people who've been there for me and my children. If you can't be supportive, then I need you to leave. The silence was deafening. Sophie started to cry and Lucas moved closer to Brielle, taking her hand. Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway. Perhaps some fresh air would be good? The garden is lovely even in winter. But Mrs. Harper was already gathering her purse. I think we've overstayed our welcome. Come along, Jonathan. Mr. Harper followed her toward the door but paused. Jackson, think about what you're doing. This woman is a stranger. Don't let loneliness cloud your judgment. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in 2 years, Jackson said. Goodbye, Dad. After his parents left, Jackson stood motionless in the foyer. Brielle moved the children back to their toys, asking Mrs. Patterson to stay with them, then returned to Jackson. Hey, she said gently. You okay? I just told my parents to leave. On the day after Christmas. You set boundaries. That's different. They're going to be furious. Probably. But you did the right thing. Brielle touched his arm. Jackson, those children were watching. They heard you defend them. They heard you choose them over keeping peace with your parents. That matters more than you know. Jackson's eyes filled with tears. I'm so tired of everyone thinking they know what's best for my kids. Like I'm not capable of making good decisions for them. You made a good decision on Christmas Eve. You brought them to meet someone new even though they were sick, because the alternative was leaving them with a stranger. You chose to keep them close. That's good parenting. And then I got lucky that you stayed. Maybe, Brielle agreed. Or maybe the universe puts people where they need to be. You really believe that? I'm standing here, aren't I? Jackson laughed, a wet sound that was half sob. You are. You really are. They stood there for a moment, close enough that Brielle could feel the warmth of him. Then Sophie's voice called from the living room, Miss Brie? Can we have hot chocolate? Duty calls, Brielle said with a small smile. The rest of the day passed more peacefully. They made hot chocolate, watched movies, and Brielle finally got that full tour of Lucas's room with its telescope and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Sophie showed off her collection of stuffed animals, each with an elaborate backstory that Brielle listened to with patient attention. That evening, as they were putting the twins to bed, Sophie asked the question that had been hanging in the air. Miss Brie, are you going to be our nanny? Brielle glanced at Jackson, who waited anxiously for her answer. Would you like me to be? Yes, both twins said in unison. Then I think we need to have a serious conversation about it, Brielle said. With your daddy. About what that would look like and what everyone needs. After the children were asleep, Jackson and Brielle sat down in his office, a more formal space than the cozy den. So, Jackson said, let's talk about this properly. I want to hire you as my children's nanny. Part-time, accommodating your hospital schedule. Name your salary. Jackson. I'm serious. Whatever you think is fair, I'll pay it. With benefits, bonuses, whatever you need. Brielle thought carefully. I make $75,000 a year at the hospital. If I go part-time there, I'll lose about half that. So I'd need at least $40,000 to maintain my current income. How about $100,000? Jackson said immediately. What? No, that's too much. It's not. You're a trained pediatric nurse with 7 years of experience. You're providing medical care, emotional support, and stability for my children. That's worth far more than $100,000, but it's where I'm starting. Jackson, I can't. Yes, you can. Full benefits, 3 weeks paid vacation, and you can adjust your schedule around your hospital shifts. Work from here when you need to for paperwork or meetings. I'll provide a car and gas allowance. Whatever you need to make this work. Brielle stared at him. You're serious. Completely. My children love you. You're good for them. And, he paused. You're good for me too. Having you here these past 2 days has reminded me what it feels like to not be alone in this. I need to think about it, Brielle said. Not about the money. About everything. About what it means to be in your children's lives like this. About boundaries and expectations and what happens if things don't work out. Fair, Jackson said. Think about it. Take as long as you need. But Brielle? Yes. I really hope you say yes. Brielle drove home that night with a lot on her mind. A job offer that would change her life. Children who already felt like hers. A man who looked at her like she was the answer to prayers he'd been afraid to voice. It was all happening so fast. Too fast probably. But sometimes fast was right. Sometimes you met people who fit into your life like they'd always been there, like they were just waiting for you to find them. She fell asleep thinking about telescopes and stuffed animals and 2 little voices asking if she'd stay. On December 27th, Brielle made her decision. She called Jackson before she could overthink it. I'll do it, she said when he answered. I'll be your nanny. Part-time. With all the conditions you mentioned. There was a long pause. Really? Really? But Jackson, we need to be clear about something. This is a professional arrangement. For the children. Whatever else might be developing between us, we put that aside until we figure out if this working relationship can succeed. Agreed, Jackson said, though she could hear the smile in his voice. When can you start? Today if you need me. The kids will be thrilled. And they were. When Brielle arrived later that morning, Sophie and Lucas tackled her with hugs. Mrs. Patterson smiled knowingly. Even Jackson looked lighter, like a weight had been lifted. So what does a nanny do? Lucas asked seriously. Well, Brielle said, kneeling to his level. I help take care of you. I make sure you're healthy and happy. I play with you and read to you and help you learn new things. Basically, I'm here to make your lives better. Like a friend who gets paid? Sophie asked. Exactly like that. Over the next week they established routines. Brielle came every morning around 9 a.m. after Jackson had gotten the twins breakfast. She spent the day with them while Jackson worked in his home office, though he took regular breaks to check in or join them for activities. They did art projects, covering Mrs. Patterson's kitchen table with paint and glitter and paper. They played board games, with Sophie winning far too often to be coincidence and Lucas insisting she cheated. She didn't. They read books, dozens of them, everything from picture books to early chapter books. Brielle also took them outside every day, bundled in winter coats, to play in the snow. They built snowmen, made snow angels, and had snowball fights that left everyone laughing and wet. "You're good at this," Jackson said one afternoon, watching from the window as Brielle helped Sophie build an elaborate snow fort. Mrs. Patterson stood beside him. "She's a natural. Those children haven't been this happy since Catherine," Jackson finished. "I know. Does that bother you?" "No," Jackson said honestly. "It gives me hope. That they can be happy again. That we all can." Brielle also established medical routines. She made sure the twins took their medications on schedule, tracked their recovery progress, and taught them about staying healthy. She showed them how to properly wash their hands, explained why sleep was important, and made nutrition fun by letting them help plan and prepare healthy meals. "Miss Bree makes vegetables taste good," Lucas announced one evening at dinner. "That's because we picked them out together," Brielle explained. "And you helped cook them. Food always tastes better when you're part of making it. Can we do that again tomorrow?" "Absolutely. But here's what matters most. Would you let someone new into your children's lives this quickly? Have you ever had to make a decision that felt crazy but right? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more chapters. I promise you won't want to miss what happens next." In the evenings after the twins were in bed, Brielle and Jackson would talk. Sometimes about the kids, sometimes about work, sometimes about nothing and everything. "Tell me about your favorite patient," Jackson said one night. Brielle thought for a moment. Her name was Jenny. 5 years old, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. She was in and out of the hospital for 2 years. Chemotherapy, infections, scary complications. But she never lost her joy. She'd make crafts for the nurses, tell jokes that made no sense, sing songs at the top of her lungs. "Did she make it?" Jackson asked gently. "She did. She's 9 now, in remission, living her best life. Her mom sends me pictures sometimes. Jenny doing ballet, Jenny at school, Jenny being normal and healthy and alive. That must feel amazing." "It does. But I also remember the ones who didn't make it. The families I sat with during their worst moments. That's part of the job too. Showing up for people even when you can't fix everything." Jackson was quiet for a moment. "Is that what you're doing here? Showing up for us?" "Maybe. But you're showing up for me too. This job, this opportunity, it's giving me something I didn't know I was missing." "What's that?" "Purpose beyond the hospital. Connection beyond coworkers and patients. A family." She paused. "I mean, I know I'm not actually family. I'm the nanny. But sometimes it feels like you belong here," Jackson finished. "Because you do, Brielle. I know it's only been a week. I know this is all moving fast. But you belong here." On New Year's Eve, they had a small celebration at home. Too small to call a party, too festive to be just another evening. Mrs. Patterson made special food and they set up a countdown clock for the kids. At 9 p.m., midnight in New York, their compromise, they all gathered in the living room to watch the ball drop on TV. "What are we wishing for the new year?" Brielle asked as the countdown began. "That Miss Bree stays forever," Sophie said immediately. "That we don't get sick again," Lucas added. "That we're happy," Jackson said, looking directly at Brielle. "That we're all right here together," Brielle agreed. They counted down, 10, 9, 8. When they reached 1, streamers flew and noisemakers blared. The twins jumped around excitedly. Jackson pulled them both into a hug. And Brielle stood there watching this family she'd somehow become part of, feeling like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Later, after the twins were finally asleep, an hour past their bedtime, but it was New Year's, Jackson walked Brielle to her car. "Thank you for being here tonight," he said. "Where else would I be?" "I don't know. Out with friends? At a party? On a date with someone who isn't a widowed single dad with 2 kids?" "Jackson," Brielle said firmly, "I'm exactly where I want to be. Even though we agreed to keep things professional? Especially because of that. We're building something good here. For the kids. Let's not mess it up by rushing." Jackson nodded, but Brielle could see the longing in his eyes. She felt it too if she was honest. But some things were worth waiting for. The next week continued in the same pattern. Brielle came every morning, spent the day with the twins, stayed through dinner most evenings. Jackson's company slowly learned to function without him being physically present every day. He held video meetings from his home office, made decisions via phone, and only went into the main building a few times a week. "I'm actually getting more done this way," he told Brielle one afternoon. "When I'm at the office, there are constant interruptions. People stopping by just to chat or meetings that could have been emails. Here I can focus." "And you're not missing the children growing up," Brielle added. "That too. Lucas told me about his science project today. Actually sat and explained the whole thing to me. When was the last time I knew what was happening in their lives beyond the basics?" "You're doing great, Jackson. Really great." On January 3rd, Brielle went back to the hospital part-time. She'd negotiated to work 3 12-hour shifts per week, leaving her 4 full days to spend with Sophie and Lucas. Her co-workers were curious about her sudden schedule change. "So there is a man," her friend Kendra said knowingly over lunch in the hospital cafeteria. "It's not like that. I'm working as a nanny for his children. A very well-paid nanny, I'm guessing, if you can afford to go part-time." "The pay is good," Brielle admitted. "But that's not why I'm doing it." "Then why are you doing it?" Brielle thought about how to explain. "Have you ever met someone and felt like you've been waiting for them your whole life, even though you didn't know you were waiting?" "Oh, it's definitely like that," Kendra said with a grin. "The kids, Kendra. I'm talking about the kids." "Sure you are." But Kendra wasn't entirely wrong. Brielle was falling for Jackson's children. She was also falling for Jackson himself, even though she kept trying to maintain professional boundaries. It was in the little things. The way he smiled when she walked through the door each morning. How he always made sure her favorite coffee was brewed fresh. The way he listened when she talked about her hospital shifts, asking thoughtful questions and actually caring about the answers. It was in how he watched her with his children, his eyes soft with gratitude and something deeper. How he sometimes touched her hand briefly when passing her something, like he couldn't help himself. How he looked at her during quiet moments, when he thought she wasn't paying attention, with an expression that made her heart race. One evening, after a particularly long day, they were cleaning up the kitchen together while Mrs. Patterson had taken the twins upstairs for baths. "I need to tell you something," Jackson said, drying dishes while Brielle washed. "Okay. I'm trying really hard to respect our agreement. To keep things professional. To not." He trailed off. "To not what?" "To not tell you that I think about you constantly. That having you in our lives has changed everything. That I'm falling for you and trying really hard not to because I don't want to mess this up." Brielle's hands stilled in the dishwater. "Jackson. I know we agreed to wait. To focus on the kids. And I'm not asking for anything to change. I just needed you to know. That this isn't just professional for me. That it hasn't been since that first night in the emergency room when you stayed." Brielle turned to face him, water dripping from her hands. "It's not just professional for me either." "It's not? How could it be?" "I'm watching you be an amazing father. I'm seeing your kindness and your strength and your dedication. I'm falling in love with your children, Jackson. And I'm falling for you too. But they come first. Sophie and Lucas. They've been through so much already. We can't risk messing up their stability because we're impatient." Jackson nodded slowly. "You're right. You're absolutely right. He set down the dish towel and ran his hand through his hair in that gesture she'd come to recognize as frustration or stress. "How long do we wait?" "I don't know. Until it feels right. Until we're sure this isn't just attraction or gratitude or convenience. Until we know it's real. It already feels real to me. To me too. But let's be smart about this. For them." From upstairs, they could hear Sophie's laughter and Lucas's protests about having to wash behind his ears. The sounds of normal, happy childhood. "Okay," Jackson said. "We wait. We're patient. We do this right. Thank you." "But Brielle? When the time comes when we've waited long enough and we're sure, I'm going to ask you out on a proper date. With flowers and a nice restaurant and everything we missed that first night." Brielle smiled. "I'm going to say yes." "Good." They stood there in the kitchen, dishes forgotten, looking at each other with all the promise of what might be. Then Mrs. Patterson's voice floated down the stairs. "Children are ready for stories." The spell broke and they both laughed. "That's our cue," Brielle said. "Yeah, it is." They went upstairs together to read stories and tuck in children and continue building the life they were creating. A life that was professional and proper and exactly what the twins needed. A life that was also, quietly and carefully, becoming something more. On January 10th, everything changed. Brielle arrived at the house at her usual time to find Jackson on the phone, pacing in his office, his voice sharp with tension. I understand that, Robert, but I need concrete numbers before I can make a decision. No, tomorrow isn't soon enough. Because we're talking about 300 jobs, that's why. Mrs. Patterson met Brielle in the foyer, concern on her face. He's been like that since 6 a.m. Some crisis at the company. The children are having breakfast. Brielle found Sophie and Lucas at the kitchen table, both looking worried. Daddy's upset, Sophie said quietly. I know, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups have stressful work situations. Is he going to have to leave? Lucas asked. I don't know. But whatever happens, we'll be okay. That's what I'm here for. Jackson emerged from his office an hour later, looking exhausted despite it being only 10 a.m. I'm sorry, he said to Brielle. I know this isn't what you signed up for. What's going on? One of our biggest clients is threatening to pull their contract. Something about missed deadlines and quality concerns. If we lose them, we'll have to do layoffs. Major ones. How major? A third of our staff. Maybe more. Jackson rubbed his eyes. I need to fly to Chicago. Today. Meet with their executive team in person and try to salvage this. Then go, Brielle said immediately. But the kids will be fine with me. That's literally my job, Jackson. It might be overnight. Maybe 2 nights. I'd need to leave within the hour to catch the flight. So pack. I've got everything handled here. Jackson looked at her, gratitude and worry warring on his face. Are you sure? Completely sure. Your employees need you. Go save their jobs. He nodded and headed upstairs to pack. Sophie and Lucas appeared in the hallway, having heard the conversation. Daddy's leaving? Sophie's voice trembled. Just for a day or two, Brielle assured her. For work. But I'll be here the whole time. Promise? Lucas asked. I promise. In fact, I'll stay overnight. We can have a slumber party. Movies and popcorn and staying up a tiny bit late. How does that sound? The twins looked uncertain but nodded. Jackson came back down with a small suitcase. He knelt in front of his children. I have to go handle some important business. But Miss Bree will take amazing care of you. I'll call tonight before bed, okay? Okay, Daddy, Sophie said, hugging him tightly. Love you both so much, Jackson said, his voice thick with emotion. He stood and looked at Brielle. Thank you. I'll text you updates. Call me if you need anything anytime. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. We'll be fine. Go save the day. After Jackson left, Brielle could feel the anxiety radiating from the twins. They'd been clingy since their mother died, and having their father suddenly leave for a business trip clearly triggered old fears. Okay, Brielle said, clapping her hands together. Who wants to help me plan the best slumber party ever? She spent the morning distracting them with activities. They made a blanket fort in the living room, baked cookies with Mrs. Patterson, and worked on art projects. By lunchtime, both children seemed more relaxed. Jackson called around 3 p.m. How are they? He asked, his voice tight with stress. They're good. We're having a fort-building contest. Sophie's winning. I am not, Sophie shouted in the background, giggling. Lucas's fort is bigger. But yours is prettier, Lucas argued. Jackson's laugh through the phone was relief and joy mixed. I miss them already. They miss you too. But we're managing. How's Chicago? Tense. The meeting is tonight. I won't know anything until tomorrow morning probably. You'll fix it. I believe in you. Thank you. For everything. For being there so I can be here. That's what you pay me for, Brielle said lightly. It's more than that. You know it is. I know. Now go prepare for your meeting. Save those jobs. Yes, ma'am. That evening, Brielle made good on her slumber party promise. They had pizza for dinner, made popcorn, and watched movies in the blanket fort. She let them stay up until 9:30, which felt like a huge treat for 6-year-olds used to 8 p.m. bedtimes. When Jackson called for goodnight kisses over video chat, both children were yawning but happy. We made a fort, Daddy, Sophie said, showing him the camera view. I see that. It's amazing. Are you being good for Miss Bree? The best, Brielle confirmed. Now say goodnight. Daddy needs to rest before his big meeting tomorrow. Good night, Daddy. We love you. Love you both more than the moon and the stars. After the kids were asleep, Jackson called back. Thank you, he said, for making this easier for them. For me. How are you really doing? Brielle asked, hearing the strain in his voice. Terrified. If I can't fix this, hundreds of people lose their jobs. Families lose their income. Right after the holidays. You'll find a way. I've seen how you think, how you problem solve. You care about your employees. That matters. Does it? Sometimes I think caring makes it harder. Like I'm too emotionally invested to see the business clearly. The best leaders care. They just don't let emotion override logic. You can do both. When did you get so wise? I spend my days with 6-year-olds. They teach you a lot about balance. Jackson laughed, a real laugh this time. I miss you. Is that weird to say? A little. But I miss you too. This waiting thing is hard. It is. But it's still the right thing. I know. Doesn't make it easier though. They talked for another hour about nothing and everything. Brielle told him about her latest hospital shift, about a patient who'd finally gone into remission. Jackson told her about his company, about the employees he was fighting for, about the pressure he felt to succeed. I should let you sleep, Jackson finally said. Big day tomorrow. For both of us. You've got this, Jackson. I believe in you. Keep saying that. I need to hear it. I believe in you. Now go get some rest. The next day was harder. The twins were clingier, missing their father, adjusting to the routine change. Sophie had a minor meltdown over her toast being cut wrong. Lucas refused to take his vitamins. Normal kid stuff but exhausting. Mrs. Patterson helped immensely, taking over lunch preparation so Brielle could handle a tantrum. By afternoon, both children were calm again, playing quietly while Brielle checked her work emails. Jackson called at 2 p.m. How bad is it? Brielle asked immediately, hearing the exhaustion in his voice. It's actually going better than expected. They're willing to negotiate. We're working out a new timeline and bringing in additional quality oversight. I think we can save the contract. That's amazing. It means I'll be home tonight though. Late but tonight. Around 11 p.m. The kids will be thrilled. What about you? I'll be thrilled too. This house is too quiet without you. Miss me that much? Maybe a little. When Jackson finally arrived home at 11:30 p.m., Brielle was waiting up, reading in the den. He looked exhausted but victorious. We saved it, he said, collapsing onto the couch. All 300 jobs. Had to make some concessions, but everyone keeps their employment. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. Knowing you were here taking care of them meant I could focus completely on saving the company. That's what I'm here for. No, Jackson said, sitting up and looking at her intently. You're here for so much more than that. These past 2 days I couldn't stop thinking about coming home. Not just to the kids but to you. To this. To us. Jackson. I know we're waiting. I know we're being smart and putting the kids first. But Brielle, I need you to know something. This isn't just attraction or convenience or gratitude. I'm in love with you. Brielle's breath caught. You can't say that. Why not? It's true. Because it makes waiting harder. Good. Because waiting is torture. Jackson ran his hand through his hair. I'm not asking for anything to change. I'm just telling you how I feel. I love you. I love how you are with my children. I love your strength and your kindness and your terrible singing voice when you think no one's listening. My singing voice is not terrible, Brielle protested weakly. It's pretty bad. But I love it anyway. I love everything about you. Brielle stood up, needing distance to think. But Jackson stood too, closing the space between them. Say something, he said softly. I love you too, Brielle whispered. I've been trying so hard not to. Trying to be professional and careful and smart. But I love you, Jackson Harper. I love your children. I love this life we're building. So what do we do about it? We keep waiting. Just a little longer. Until we're absolutely sure. I'm already sure. Then wait for me to be sure. Please. Jackson nodded, stepping back reluctantly. Okay, I'll wait. But Brielle? Yes. This waiting has an expiration date. I'm not waiting forever. You won't have to. They stood there in the quiet house, love acknowledged but still unconsummated, building the tension and the promise of what was coming. Finally Jackson smiled. I should check on the kids. They're fine. But go ahead. They'll be happy to know you're home. Jackson headed upstairs, and Brielle heard his soft footsteps padding to the twins' rooms. She heard his whispered, I love you to each sleeping child. Heard him pull their blankets up higher, saw the light from his phone as he no doubt took pictures of their peaceful faces. When he came back down she was gathering her things. You're leaving? You're home now. You don't need me here overnight. I always need you here. But I understand. See you tomorrow? Tomorrow, Brielle confirmed. She drove home through the dark streets, her mind whirling. He loved her. He'd said it out loud, made it real. And she'd said it back, despite all her intentions to be cautious and slow. They were in love and they were still waiting, and somehow that made it both harder and more meaningful. At home, Brielle lay in bed thinking about Jackson's exhausted but happy face. About how he'd fought for his employees, had traveled across the country and negotiated for hours to save their jobs. About how he'd called multiple times a day just to hear his children's voices. About how she'd fallen in love with a man who loved deeply and worked hard and never gave up on the people who mattered to him. She touched the bracelet on her wrist, the one from Christmas. For staying. She was still staying. And she was starting to think she'd never want to leave. 2 weeks later, on a cold January morning, everything shifted again. Brielle had settled into a rhythm with the family. 3 days a week at the hospital, 4 days with Sophie and Lucas. Weekends were still Jackson's primary time with the kids, but Brielle often stopped by for a few hours anyway, unable to stay away. The twins had started back at school after the winter break, which meant Brielle's days had more structure. School drop-off at 8 a.m., picking them up at 3 p.m., helping with homework and activities in between. "You're essentially a full-time parent," Kendra had said at the hospital. "Except you get to go home at night." Most nights, Brielle had corrected. She'd ended up staying over several more times, whenever Jackson had late business calls or early morning meetings. It felt natural. Like this was always how her life was supposed to be. On January 25th, Jackson asked Brielle to come over after the twins were asleep. "Is everything okay?" she asked when she arrived around 8 p.m. "Everything's fine. I just wanted to talk to you." Adult conversation that isn't about school projects or bedtime routines. They sat in the den, the fire going, snow falling outside the windows. Mrs. Patterson had left coffee and cookies on a tray before heading to her own quarters for the night. "How's the hospital?" Jackson asked. "Good. Busy. January always is. Kids get sick, accidents happen. We admitted a 3-year-old with pneumonia yesterday. Reminded me of Sophie and Lucas on Christmas Eve. Are they okay?" "They will be. Parents are staying around the clock. That's what you do when your child needs you. Like you did for my kids. And me. That was different." "How?" "I wasn't their parent. I was just..." Brielle trailed off. "Just what?" "Someone who cared." Jackson was quiet for a moment, studying her face in the firelight. "I have something for you. Actually, 2 somethings." He pulled out an envelope and handed it to her. Inside was a formal document, a revised employment contract. "What's this?" "An offer. I want you to go full-time. Give up the hospital completely. Be with the kids 5 days a week, with benefits and a salary of $150,000. Plus bonuses tied to the company's performance." Brielle stared at the numbers. $150,000? You're worth more. But I didn't want to insult you by offering something ridiculous. This is already ridiculous. No, it's not. You have 7 years of pediatric nursing experience. You provide medical care, emotional support, educational enrichment, and you've become essential to this family. That's worth every penny. Brielle set the contract down. "Jackson, I can't just quit my job." "Why not?" Because I worked hard for that career. I love that work." "Do you love it more than this?" It was a loaded question and they both knew it. Brielle thought about her hospital shifts. The long hours, the emotional toll, the bureaucracy and paperwork. She loved helping sick children, would always love that. "But I can do more good here," she admitted quietly. "With Sophie and Lucas. Giving them stability and care that prevents them from needing a hospital in the first place. So say yes." "It's a huge decision." "Then let's talk through it. What are your concerns?" Brielle thought carefully. "What happens if you meet someone? If you want to date, get remarried someday? Your new partner might not want me around." Jackson's expression turned fierce. "First, I'm not looking for anyone else. Second, any woman who couldn't accept you as part of this family wouldn't be right for us anyway. And third..." He paused. "That brings me to the second something I wanted to talk about." He stood up and began pacing, nervous energy radiating from him. "Our agreement," he said. "About waiting. About keeping things professional." "Yes. I think we've waited long enough." Brielle's heart raced. "Jackson. It's been 6 weeks. 6 weeks of seeing you every day, of watching you love my children, of falling more in love with you myself. I think we've been smart and patient and careful. I think the kids are stable and secure. And I think..." He stopped in front of her, kneeling so they were eye level. "I think it's time." "Time for what?" "Time for me to ask you on that proper date I promised. With flowers and a nice restaurant and everything we should have had on Christmas Eve. Time for us to stop pretending this is just professional. Time for us to be honest about what this is. And what is this? Brielle asked, her voice barely a whisper. Everything, Jackson said simply. You're everything. To me. To my kids. We're a family now, Brielle. The four of us. It happened somehow when I wasn't looking. You became essential. Brielle felt tears prick her eyes. I'm scared. Of what? Of messing this up. Of it not working out and having to leave. Of disappointing the children. Of disappointing you. Jackson took her hands in his. You could never disappoint me. But Brielle, relationships are always a risk. Love is always a risk. We can keep waiting, keep being careful, but that doesn't make it any safer. It just makes us miss out on what could be incredible. You really want this? I've wanted this since Christmas Eve. I've just been respecting your timeline. But if you're ready, if you feel what I feel, then yes. I want this more than I've wanted anything in a long time. Brielle looked at their joined hands, thinking about everything. About sick children in emergency rooms and Christmas morning in borrowed nightgowns and blanket forts and bedtime stories. About falling in love with two 6-year-olds who called her Miss Brie and trusted her with their hearts. About falling in love with a man who loved his children more than anything, who fought for his employees, who looked at her like she hung the moon. Okay, she said finally. Okay. Okay, I'll go full-time. I'll quit the hospital. And okay, you can take me on that date. Jackson's face lit up with pure joy. Really? Really? But Jackson, we need to talk to the kids. Make sure they understand what this means. We will. Together. As a family. That night, they sat down with Sophie and Lucas at breakfast the next morning. Both children looked between the adults curiously. We have something to tell you, Jackson started. Miss Brie is going to be with us full-time now. Every day. Every day. Sophie's eyes went wide. Every day, Brielle confirmed. And there's something else. Your daddy and I, we care about each other. A lot. So we're going to go on a date. Like grown-ups do when they like each other. Lucas's face scrunched up in thought. Like boyfriend and girlfriend? Sort of like that, yes. Will you be our mom? Sophie asked, her voice small and hopeful. Brielle's heart clenched. I don't know, sweetie. That's something we'd have to figure out together, all of us. But what I do know is that I love you both very much. And whatever happens with me and your daddy, that doesn't change. Do you love daddy? Lucas asked bluntly. Jackson and Brielle looked at each other. Yes, Brielle said honestly. I do love your daddy. Do you love Miss Brie? Sophie asked Jackson. Very much, Jackson said. The twins looked at each other, having some kind of silent sibling communication. Then they both nodded. Okay, Lucas said. You can date. But you have to be nice to each other. And you have to still read us stories, Sophie added. Every single night, Brielle promised. And Daddy has to promise not to work too much, Lucas said seriously. Jackson laughed. I promise to work less. Miss Brie will make sure I keep that promise. Then okay, Sophie declared. We approve. That evening, Jackson took Brielle on their first official date. Mrs. Patterson stayed with the twins, who waved excitedly as they left. Jackson had made reservations at an elegant restaurant downtown, and he'd had flowers delivered to Brielle's apartment earlier. She wore a blue dress, her hair down, the bracelet he'd given her on Christmas visible on her wrist. You look beautiful, Jackson said when he picked her up. You clean up nice yourself. At the restaurant, they were seated at a quiet table by the window. No sick children, no emergency rooms, no interruptions. Just the two of them finally. To second chances, Jackson said, raising his wine glass. To showing up when it matters, Brielle added. They talked through dinner about everything. About their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. About what they wanted for the future, both together and separately. I want more kids, Jackson said. Someday. If we get married. Would you want that? I would. I've always wanted a big family. And you'd want to marry me? Hypothetically. Brielle smiled. Hypothetically, yes. But let's have a few more dates first. Make sure you don't have any terrible habits I should know about. I leave my socks on the floor. And I'm terrible at remembering to replace the toilet paper roll. Those are manageable. What else? I work too much, but you already know that. I'm grumpy before coffee. And I still miss my late wife sometimes, which might be hard for you. It's not hard, Brielle said seriously. She gave you those beautiful children. She made you who you are. I'd never want you to forget her or pretend she didn't matter. How are you so perfect? I'm not. I'm stubborn and independent, and I have trust issues from losing my parents young. I overthink everything. And I cry during commercials, which is embarrassing. I love all of those things about you. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront, bundled in their coats against the January cold. The city lights reflected on the water, and couples walked past them, wrapped up in their own worlds. Can I kiss you? Jackson asked when they reached a quiet spot. I've been waiting for you to ask. He cupped her face gently, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Brielle didn't want to pull away. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted everything they were building together. When their lips met, it felt like coming home. Like every piece of the puzzle finally clicking into place. Like all the waiting had been worth it for this moment. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. That was... Jackson started. Worth waiting for, Brielle finished. Definitely worth waiting for. They drove back to his house to check on the twins before Brielle went home. Both children were asleep, but Sophie had left a note on Brielle's usual chair. Did you have a good date? Love Sophie. She's subtle, Jackson said with a laugh. She's invested in our happiness. So am I, invested in our happiness. Brielle kissed him again, softer this time, a promise of more to come. Me too. Over the next few weeks, they navigated their new relationship carefully. They didn't hide it from the children, but they also didn't make it the center of everything. Jackson still had work, Brielle still had her duties with the kids, and they both made sure Sophie and Lucas felt secure and prioritized. But there were also stolen kisses in the kitchen when the kids were watching TV. Movie nights where they sat close enough to hold hands. Morning coffee together while the twins got ready for school, discussing schedules and plans and everything that came with blending their lives together. It felt natural. Like they'd always been together, like they'd been waiting to find each other. Brielle officially gave her notice at the hospital in mid-February. Dr. Reyes was sad to see her go but understanding. You're choosing love and family. That's always the right choice. I'll miss this place. And we'll miss you. But Brielle, you're glowing. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, it's clearly where you're meant to be. On her last day, her co-workers threw her a small party. They gave her a scrapbook of memories and a gift card to her favorite bookstore. Stay in touch, Kendra said, hugging her tight. And invite me to the wedding. We're not. Brielle started. Yet. You're not engaged yet. But you will be. I can see it. Brielle smiled, not denying it. Because Kendra was probably right. This felt like forever. Jackson felt like home. As she drove to Jackson's house for what was now officially her full-time job, Brielle thought about how much had changed in 2 months. How a disastrous blind date on Christmas Eve had turned into the love of her life. Sometimes the best things happen when plans fell apart. Sometimes you had to say yes to the unexpected. Sometimes you just had to stay even when walking away would be easier. And sometimes, if you were really lucky, staying turned into everything you'd been hoping for. Valentine's Day arrived with surprising sweetness. Sophie and Lucas made homemade cards for both Brielle and Jackson, decorated with glitter and stickers and declarations of love written in crooked first-grade handwriting. We made one for you too, Miss Brie, Lucas said, handing her a card covered in red hearts. Inside he'd written, I love you, Becus, you stay. Love, Lucas. Brielle felt tears prick her eyes. This is the best Valentine I've ever received. Really? Lucas beamed. Really, truly. Sophie's card was equally touching. You're the best. You make Daddy smile. Love, Sophie. That evening, after the twins were in bed, Jackson had a surprise. He led Brielle to the backyard, where he'd set up a small tent with blankets and pillows inside, fairy lights strung overhead. What's this? Brielle asked. Our Valentine's date. I figured after the hospital and the emergency room and all the chaos, we deserved something romantic at home. Inside the tent, there was champagne, chocolate-covered strawberries, and a portable heater to keep them warm despite the February cold. This is perfect, Brielle said, settling in beside him. I have something for you, Jackson said, pulling out a small box. Brielle's heart raced. It looked like a ring box. It's not what you think, Jackson said quickly, seeing her expression. I mean, it could be someday but not yet. We're not rushing this. He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace with a small pendant, 2 intertwined hearts with a tiny star above them. The 2 hearts are Sophie and Lucas, Jackson explained. The star is you. Because you're what brought us all together. What guides us. Jackson, it's beautiful. He fastened it around her neck, his fingers gentle on her skin. I love you, Brielle. I know we've only been officially together for a few weeks, but I've known you were special since that first night. I want to build a life with you. I want you to be part of this family, officially and permanently. I want that too. Then move in with us. Brielle pulled back slightly. What? Move in. Permanently. You're here almost every day anyway. You have a toothbrush in the guest bathroom and clothes in the closet. The kids ask every night if you're staying over. Why keep your apartment when you're never there? Jackson, that's a big step. I know. But we're not kids dating casually. We're adults building a family. Moving in together makes sense. What about your parents? What would they say? I don't care what they say. This is my life, my family, my choice. Brielle thought about her small apartment across town. About how empty it felt when she was there. About how this house, with its chaos and laughter and love, felt more like home than anywhere she'd ever lived. Okay, she said. Okay. Okay, I'll move in. But we tell the kids together. Make sure they're comfortable with it. They'll be thrilled. Sophie's been asking when you're going to live here for weeks now. They told the twins the next morning at breakfast. Sophie literally jumped out of her chair with excitement. Miss Bree's staying forever? She squealed. Well, I'm moving in, Brielle clarified. Which means I'll be here every day and every night. But forever is a big word. But you're not leaving, right? Lucas asked seriously. I'm not leaving. Then that's forever, Lucas said matter-of-factly. Brielle moved in over the next 2 weeks. She didn't have much, having lived minimally as a single woman. Her furniture went to a charity shop, her personal items fit in a dozen boxes, and suddenly she was living in a mansion with a family that felt like it had always been hers. Mrs. Patterson helped her settle into a bedroom down the hall from Jackson's. For propriety, Jackson had said, though they both knew it was more about showing the kids that relationships had appropriate boundaries. You're good for him, Mrs. Patterson said as they unpacked Brielle's books. I haven't seen Mr. Harper this happy since Mrs. Catherine was alive. That doesn't bother you? That he's moving on? Lord, no. Mrs. Catherine would have loved you. She always said Mr. Harper needed someone who could be his equal, someone who wouldn't let him work himself to death. You're exactly that. Life settled into a new normal. Brielle woke up every morning in a house full of people she loved. She helped get the twins ready for school, spent her days managing the household and preparing activities for the kids, picked them up from school and helped with homework. Jackson adjusted his work schedule to be present for dinners and bedtime routines. They were building something together, a real family, and it felt right in a way nothing had ever felt before. In March, Jackson's parents made their first visit since their disastrous meeting on December 26th. Jackson had been clear with them. They could be part of their grandchildren's lives if they could be respectful of Brielle and his choices. Otherwise they could stay away. Mrs. Harper had apparently taken the ultimatum to heart. She arrived with gifts for the children and a stiff but polite greeting for Brielle. It's nice to see you again, Miss Washington. Please call me Brielle. Brielle, Mrs. Harper repeated like the name tasted strange. The children seem happy. They are. They're wonderful kids. Over lunch, Mrs. Harper watched as Sophie and Lucas interacted with Brielle. How they naturally turned to her for help, how they laughed at her jokes, how they seemed to glow in her presence. You're good with them, Mrs. Harper admitted reluctantly as Brielle was cleaning up after the meal. Thank you. I owe you an apology. I judged you unfairly when we first met. I assumed. She trailed off. You assumed I was taking advantage of your son's vulnerability. Yes, and I was wrong. You genuinely care for these children. For Jackson. I love them, Brielle said simply. All 3 of them. Mrs. Harper nodded slowly. My son has been through a lot. Losing Catherine nearly destroyed him. I was afraid he'd never recover. But you? She paused. You've brought him back to life. He did that himself. I just showed up. Sometimes showing up is everything. Mrs. Harper's expression softened. Thank you. For loving my family. After they left, Jackson pulled Brielle into a hug. That went better than expected. Your mother apologized. I heard. I was eavesdropping from the office. Of course you were. She's right though. You did bring me back to life. Before you, I was just going through the motions. Surviving, not living. You changed that. We changed each other, Brielle said. I was alone, throwing myself into work to avoid dealing with my own loneliness. You gave me a family. Purpose beyond just a job. You gave me home. Is this home? Really? Really? In April, Jackson sat her down for another serious conversation. I want to adopt you, he said. Brielle laughed. I'm pretty sure that's not how adoption works. Okay, wrong word. I want to marry you. Brielle's laughter stopped. What? I want to marry you. I know it's fast. We've only been officially together for a few months. But Brielle, I don't need more time to know you're it for me. You're the one. I want to make this official. I want you to be my wife, the kid's mother, permanently part of this family. Jackson. I don't have a ring yet. I wanted to talk to you first, make sure you were on the same page before I plan some elaborate proposal. But if you need more time, I'll wait. As long as you need. Brielle thought about her life before. The empty apartment, the solo dinners, the gnawing loneliness she tried to fill with extra shifts at work. About how she'd resigned herself to maybe never having the family she'd always dreamed of. Then she thought about Christmas Eve, about staying when she could have left. About 2 sick children and a desperate father. About building blanket forts and reading bedtime stories and learning that love could show up in the most unexpected ways. I don't need more time, she said. Yes. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Whenever you want to ask officially, the answer is yes. Jackson kissed her, long and deep and full of promise. When they pulled apart, both were smiling like idiots. I'm going to do this right, Jackson said. With a proper proposal. Something the kids can be part of. Something you'll remember. I'll remember this conversation for the rest of my life. Good. But I'm still planning something special. Over the next few weeks, Jackson clearly plotted something. He had secret conversations with Sophie and Lucas, made mysterious phone calls, and got packages delivered that he immediately hid. Brielle pretended not to notice, letting him have his moment. On May 12th, a Saturday morning, Jackson announced they were going to the park for a family picnic. The weather's perfect, he said. We should take advantage. They packed a lunch and drove to the large park near the house. Sophie and Lucas were suspiciously well-behaved, not fighting over who got to sit where in the car or what music to play. At the park, Jackson led them to a specific spot under a large oak tree. There was already a blanket laid out, and as they got closer, Brielle saw it was decorated with flowers and photos. Photos of them. All of them together. From Christmas, from random days around the house, from Sophie's school play, from Lucas's science fair. Moments captured and displayed in a circle on the blanket. In the center was a small box. Brielle's breath caught. Jackson. Sophie, Lucas, come here, Jackson called. The twins ran over, both grinning like they knew exactly what was about to happen. Jackson took Brielle's hands, the children standing on either side of them. Brielle Washington, 5 months ago, you walked into our lives on what was supposed to be a simple blind date. Instead, you stayed through an emergency room visit, Christmas morning, and every single day after that. You showed us what love looks like, what family means, what it means to show up even when things are hard. Tears were already streaming down Brielle's face. I know this is fast, Jackson continued. I know conventional wisdom says we should wait longer. But conventional wisdom doesn't account for soul mates. For finding the person who makes everything make sense. For meeting someone and knowing deep in your bones that this is it. This is the one. He knelt down, still holding her hands. Will you marry me? Will you officially become part of this family? Will you be my wife and their mother and the person I get to love for the rest of my life? Sophie and Lucas chimed in together. Please say yes, Miss Brie. Brielle laughed through her tears. Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Jackson opened the box to reveal a stunning ring. A sapphire surrounded by diamonds, unique and beautiful and exactly her style. How did you know? She asked as he slid it onto her finger. I pay attention. You mentioned once that you loved sapphires. That your grandmother had a sapphire ring. This is perfect. You're perfect. Sophie and Lucas tackled them both in a hug, all 4 of them ending up in a happy pile on the blanket, laughing and crying and celebrating. We're a real family now, Sophie said. We were always a real family, Brielle corrected gently. This just makes it official. Around them, other parkgoers clapped and cheered, strangers celebrating their happiness. But Brielle barely noticed. She was too focused on the man she loved and the children who had become hers in every way that mattered. That evening, back at home, they called everyone to share the news. Mrs. Patterson cried happy tears. Jackson's parents offered stiff congratulations that were warming into genuine acceptance. Brielle's friends from the hospital squealed with delight. When's the wedding? Kendra asked. Soon, Brielle said, looking at Jackson. We don't want to wait long. Summer, Jackson confirmed. Something simple. Just family and close friends. What matters is making it official. What matters, Brielle corrected, is celebrating the family we've already built. As they put the twins to bed that night, both children full of questions about the wedding and whether they could be in it, yes, and what they would wear, whatever they wanted, Brielle felt a peace she'd never known before. This was what she'd been waiting for her whole life. Not a perfect man or a perfect situation, but this perfectly imperfect family. These children who called her Miss Bree and were about to call her Mom. This man who had been broken and was now healing, who had learned to love again, who looked at her like she hung the stars. Happy? Jackson asked as they closed the twins' doors. So happy I could burst. Good. Because I plan to keep you this happy for the next 60 or 70 years. Only 60 or 70? Okay, 80 to be safe. Brielle kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. It's a deal. The wedding planning consumed the next few months in the best possible way. Brielle had never been one of those girls who dreamed about her perfect wedding, but now that it was real, she found herself excited about every little detail. Sophie and Lucas were intimately involved in everything. They helped pick flowers, they voted for as many colors as possible. They sampled cake flavors, chocolate won unanimously. They had strong opinions about music, kid-friendly only, no boring slow songs. This is their wedding too, Brielle said when the wedding planner looked overwhelmed by the children's input. They're becoming my children officially. They should have a say. The planner, a kind woman named Patricia, smiled. You're going to be a wonderful mother. I already am a mother, Brielle said. This just makes it legal. They decided on an early June wedding, giving them about 6 weeks to plan. Jackson wanted to hire a full staff to handle everything, but Brielle insisted on keeping it personal. I don't want some cookie-cutter event. I want it to feel like us, like our family. So they compromised. They hired Patricia for coordination and logistics, but made all the decisions themselves. The ceremony would be in the backyard of Jackson's house, under the same oak tree where he'd proposed. The reception would be a casual afternoon affair with lawn games and barbecue and children running around freely. Your parents are going to hate this, Brielle said after they finalized the plans. My parents can deal with it. Or they can stay home. But surprisingly, Mrs. Harper was actually helpful. She offered to host a small bridal shower, which Brielle accepted graciously. She also helped with some of the vendor negotiations, using her social connections to get better deals. I think she's trying, Jackson said after his mother spent an afternoon helping pick out table linens. She's trying. I appreciate that. The one point of tension was Brielle's family. Or rather, her lack of family. With her parents and grandmother gone, she had no one to walk her down the aisle. I could ask one of my former professors, she said. Or maybe Kendra? Or, Sophie piped up from her spot on the floor where she was drawing wedding pictures, Daddy could do it. Sweetie, Daddy's going to be waiting for me at the altar. Then Lucas and me could do it. We could walk you down. Brielle and Jackson looked at each other, both tearing up at the same time. You know what? Brielle said. That's the perfect solution. Would you two like to walk me down the aisle? Really? Lucas asked, looking up from his own drawing. Really? I can't think of anyone more important to have by my side. What about me? A voice said from the doorway. They all turned to see an older woman standing there, someone Brielle didn't recognize at first. Then her heart stopped. Aunt Monica? Monica Richardson, her mother's sister, stood in the doorway with tears in her eyes. Hello, Brielle. It's been a long time. Brielle hadn't seen her aunt in over 10 years. They'd lost touch after her grandmother died, distance and busy lives pulling them apart. How did you? Brielle started. I tracked her down, Jackson said quietly. I hope that's okay. I knew you didn't have family and I thought you deserved to have someone. Monica crossed the room and pulled Brielle into a tight hug. I'm so sorry I lost touch. I should have been there for you after your grandmother passed. I was dealing with my own grief and I failed you. It's okay, Brielle said, crying into her aunt's shoulder. No, it's not. But I'm here now. And if you'll let me, I'd love to be part of this wedding. Part of your life again. I'd love that. Monica stayed for the week leading up to the wedding, helping with final preparations and reconnecting with Brielle. She told stories about Brielle's mother, shared photos Brielle had never seen, and filled in pieces of family history that had been lost. Your mom would be so proud of you, Monica said one evening as they looked through old photo albums. She always wanted you to have a big family, lots of children, a happy home. And look at you now. I wish she could be here. She is here. In you. In the love you're building. In how you showed up for these children when they needed someone. That's all her. The night before the wedding, Brielle couldn't sleep. She wandered downstairs around midnight to find Jackson in the kitchen, apparently having the same problem. Can't sleep either? She asked. Too excited. Too nervous. Too everything. They sat at the kitchen table, drinking warm milk like children, talking about nothing and everything. Are you sure about this? Brielle asked. About us? It's happening so fast. I've never been more sure of anything. Are you sure? Completely. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. For this to be too good to be true. It's not. It's just right. We're just right. They talked until 2 a.m., finally heading to their separate rooms when Mrs. Patterson found them and insisted they needed rest before the big day. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, a perfect June morning. Brielle woke to find Sophie already in her room, wearing her flower girl dress, bouncing with excitement. It's wedding day. It's wedding day. Lucas appeared moments later in his little suit. You look pretty, Miss Brie. I haven't even gotten dressed yet. You still look pretty. The morning passed in a blur. Hair and makeup, slipping into her dress, a simple ivory gown with lace sleeves, helping Sophie with her flower basket and Lucas with his tie. Aunt Monica appeared in the doorway, tears already streaming down her face. You look just like your mother did on her wedding day. Really? Really? She'd be so happy for you. At 3 p.m., guests began arriving. Not many, just close friends and family. Maybe 50 people total. They set up chairs on the lawn facing the oak tree, where Jackson stood waiting with the officiant. Mrs. Patterson peeked in. Everyone's ready for you. Brielle took a deep breath. Sophie and Lucas came to stand on either side of her, each taking one of her hands. Ready? Lucas asked seriously. Ready, Brielle confirmed. They walked out together, the three of them, through the house and into the backyard. Soft music played and all the guests stood as they appeared. But Brielle only had eyes for Jackson. He stood under the oak tree looking more handsome than she'd ever seen him, tears streaming down his face as he watched his children walk their future stepmother down the aisle. When they reached the altar, Sophie and Lucas hugged Brielle tight before going to stand beside Jackson as his best man and maid of honor. The officiant, a friend of Jackson's family, smiled at them all. We are gathered here today to celebrate not just a marriage, but the formation of a family. Jackson and Brielle's story is one of unexpected love, of showing up when it matters, of building something beautiful from a moment that could have gone so differently. Brielle caught Tasha's eye in the second row. Her friend grinned and gave her a thumbs up. That disastrous blind date had led to this. I understand you've written your own vows, the officiant continued. Jackson went first, his voice thick with emotion. Brielle, 5.5 months ago, I brought my sick children to what was supposed to be our first date. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and convinced you'd walk away the moment you saw us. Instead you stayed. You've been staying ever since. He took her hands, the sapphire ring catching the sunlight. You didn't just save my children that night. You saved me. You reminded me that life could be good again. That I could be happy again. That love doesn't have to be cautious or careful. Sometimes love is just showing up and staying. He turned slightly to include Sophie and Lucas. I'm not just marrying you today. We're all marrying you. All three of us are promising to love you, to show up for you, to stay no matter what. You're ours and we're yours. Forever. Brielle was openly crying now. She took a shaky breath and began her vows. Jackson, I came to Romano's restaurant on Christmas Eve expecting a pleasant dinner and maybe a second date if things went well. Instead, I found a man struggling with sick children, making the impossible choice between his own needs and theirs. You chose them. You always choose them. And that's when I knew. She squeezed his hands. I knew you were special. I knew this could be something real. So I stayed. And I kept staying. Through emergency rooms and Christmas mornings and every beautiful, chaotic day since then. I stayed because this felt like home. You felt like home. She looked at Sophie and Lucas. And you too. You made me a mother before I even knew I wanted to be one. You gave me purpose and joy and a family I never dared to hope for. So today I'm not just marrying your daddy. I'm choosing all three of you. Forever. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Even Jackson's father was wiping his eyes. Do you, Jackson Michael Harper, take Brielle Marie Washington to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Absolutely I do. And do you, Brielle Marie Washington, take Jackson Michael Harper to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Jackson pulled Brielle close and kissed her, a kiss full of promise and joy and everything that was to come. Around them, guests cheered and clapped. Sophie and Lucas jumped up and down excitedly. When they pulled apart, the officiant smiled. I have one more thing. Sophie and Lucas, would you come here? The twins moved forward looking curious. Jackson and Brielle have something they'd like to give you. Brielle pulled out 2 small boxes. Inside each was a necklace, a heart charm identical to the one on Brielle's own necklace. We wanted you to know, Brielle said, kneeling down to their level, that we're all family now. The four of us together. These are to remind you that you're always in my heart. Always. She fastened Sophie's necklace and Jackson helped Lucas with his. Both children looked down at their new jewelry with wonder. Does this mean you're really our mom now? Sophie asked. If you want me to be. We do, Lucas said firmly. You've been our mom since Christmas. This just makes it official. The reception was perfect chaos. Children ran around playing games while adults ate and talked and celebrated. There was no formal reception line, no stuffy traditions. Just people having fun, celebrating love. Jackson and Brielle did their first dance to a song the twins had helped pick, Count on Me by Bruno Mars. It was sweet and simple and exactly right. I'm going to cry again, Brielle said as they swayed together. You've been crying all day. Because I'm happy. So happy. Me too. When the song ended, Sophie and Lucas ran out to join them, and it became a family dance. Other guests joined in, and soon the dance floor was packed with people celebrating this new family. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the yard, Brielle stood with Jackson watching their guests. Sophie and Lucas played with some cousins, their laughter carrying through the evening air. We did it, Jackson said. We're married. We are. How does it feel? Perfect. Everything about this is perfect. 1 year later. The house was even more chaotic now, but in the best way. Sophie and Lucas were 7, thriving in 2nd grade. Brielle had officially adopted them 3 months after the wedding, a simple courthouse ceremony that meant everything. And now, on a snowy December morning, exactly 1 year and 1 day after that Christmas Eve that started it all, Brielle sat in the den nursing their newest addition, a baby girl they'd named Hope Catherine Harper. Jackson came in with coffee, looking tired but happy. How's she doing? Perfect. Just like her siblings. And you? Perfect too. Sophie and Lucas bounded in, fresh from making snow angels in the yard. Can we see Hope? Sophie asked. Quiet voices, Brielle reminded them. She's almost asleep. They sat on either side of her, peering down at their baby sister with adoration. She's so little, Lucas whispered. You were this little once. That's weird. Jackson sat on the arm of Brielle's chair, his hand resting on her shoulder. Family photo, he suggested. They arranged themselves carefully, Jackson and Brielle on the couch, Sophie and Lucas on either side, baby Hope in Brielle's arms. Mrs. Patterson took the picture on Jackson's phone. Perfect, she declared. Just perfect. Later, after the kids were in bed and Hope was sleeping in her bassinet, Jackson and Brielle stood at the window watching snow fall. Remember last Christmas Eve? Jackson asked. When everything fell apart? When everything came together, you mean? You still think that was fate? The universe putting us where we needed to be. I know it was. Because here we are. Here's our family. Here's our life. Our perfect, chaotic, beautiful life. The best kind. Jackson pulled Brielle close, and they stood there in the quiet house, surrounded by the evidence of the family they'd built. The family that had started with a simple choice. To stay when leaving would have been easier. Sometimes love wasn't a lightning bolt or a fairy tale meet cute. Sometimes love was just showing up. Being present. Choosing kindness and compassion over convenience. Sometimes love was staying. And sometimes if you stayed long enough, if you opened your heart to the unexpected and the unplanned, you found everything you'd been looking for in the last place you thought to look. Brielle and Jackson had found that. They'd found each other. They'd found their family. They'd found home. And they'd done it all because, on one snowy Christmas Eve, when life threw them an impossible situation, they both chose to stay.